Daniel Carter stood frozen in Clara Bennett's doorway, his toolbox slipping from his grip as he stared at the eviction notice clutched in her trembling hands. The quiet neighbor who had slowly become everything to him was being forced out, not because she couldn't pay, but because someone had reported their inappropriate relationship to her landlord. His jaw tightened as he read the cruel words, morally questionable cohabitation. Outside, his 7-year-old daughter Lily called his name, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. This was supposed to be simple: fix a leaky faucet, maybe stay for coffee. But somewhere between neighborly favors and shared silences, Daniel had found something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. And he wasn't about to let small-town gossip destroy it. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now settle in, because this journey is just beginning. The house on Maple Street had always been too big for just 2 people. Daniel Carter had inherited it from his parents 3 years ago, back when the rooms still smelled faintly of his mother's lavender sachets and his father's pipe tobacco. Now it smelled like whatever he burned for dinner and the strawberry shampoo Lily used. The living room furniture sat in the same places his parents had arranged it, as if moving anything might somehow erase the last traces of them. He'd meant to change things, to make the space truly his own, but every time he looked at his father's reading chair or his mother's china cabinet, the urge faded. Some mornings, when the light came through the kitchen windows just right, Daniel could almost convince himself they were still there. Almost. He was under Mrs. Patterson's sink when his phone buzzed for the 3rd time that morning. Ignoring it, he tightened the compression fitting on the supply line and tested the connection. Water flowed clean and steady. No leaks. He allowed himself a small, satisfied grunt before wiggling backward out of the cabinet, his shoulders protesting the cramped position. "You're a lifesaver, Daniel," Mrs. Patterson said, pressing a $20 bill into his palm despite his protests. "Frank used to handle all this before he passed. I don't know what I'd do without you." Daniel pocketed the money with a quiet "thank you" and headed to his truck. The afternoon sun was merciless, turning the vehicle's interior into an oven. He checked his phone while the AC struggled to life. 3 texts from Lily's school. His stomach dropped. Lily had an incident at recess. Nothing serious. Please call when you can. He dialed immediately, gripping the steering wheel as the phone rang. The school secretary connected him to the principal, Mrs. Chen, whose carefully neutral tone only amplified his anxiety. "Mr. Carter, Lily is fine physically," she began, "but there was an altercation with another student. Lily told another girl that her mother was in heaven and that she knew because her daddy told her angels take people who are too good for earth. The other child became upset and said Lily was lying because heaven isn't real. They started arguing and, well, Lily pushed her." Daniel closed his eyes. "Is the other girl okay?" "She's fine, just shaken up." "But Daniel, this is the 3rd time this month Lily's had difficulty managing her emotions when someone mentions mothers or families. I think it might help if we talked about some strategies." "I'll talk to her," Daniel interrupted, knowing he sounded defensive and not caring. "I'll pick her up early today." "That's not necessary. I said I'll talk to her." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds too long. "Of course, Mr. Carter. We'll see you soon." Daniel drove to the elementary school on autopilot, his mind replaying the conversation. 3 incidents. 3 times his daughter had acted out over something he couldn't fix with a wrench or wire strippers. He was good at fixing tangible things: pipes, electrical panels, broken fence posts. But how did you fix a 7-year-old's broken heart? Lily was waiting in the office when he arrived, her sneakers scuffed and her ponytail listing to one side. She looked up at him with those enormous brown eyes, her mother's eyes, and his anger evaporated. "Come on, sweetheart," he said quietly, holding out his hand. She took it without a word, and they walked to the truck in silence. It wasn't until they were pulling out of the parking lot that she spoke. "I didn't mean to push her." "I know." "She said Mommy wasn't real, that I was making her up." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "People say things when they don't understand. Doesn't make it right, but pushing isn't the answer either." "What is the answer?" He wished he knew. "We'll figure it out together, okay? You and me." Lily nodded, but she looked out the window instead of at him, and Daniel felt the familiar weight of inadequacy settle on his chest. His daughter deserved better than a father who was always one step behind, always scrambling to patch the holes in their life with band-aids and good intentions. They stopped at the grocery store on the way home. Lily perked up slightly in the cereal aisle, debating the merits of chocolate versus marshmallow pieces with the seriousness of a judge. Daniel let her choose both. He was a pushover, and he knew it, but making her smile felt like winning a small battle in a war he didn't know how to fight. The house next door, the Bennett house, had its porch light on when they pulled into the driveway. Daniel noticed it absently as he hauled grocery bags from the truck bed. The previous owners had moved out 14 months ago, and the place had sat empty for half a year before Clara Bennett moved in. She was quiet, kept to herself mostly. They'd exchanged pleasantries exactly twice. Once when she moved in, and once when her trash cans blew over in a windstorm, and Daniel set them upright before she got home. He knew 3 things about her. She worked from home. She drove a 10-year-old sedan that needed new brake pads. And she took her coffee on the back porch every morning at 7:30, always with a book. That was the extent of their relationship. Neighborly awareness. Nothing more. Inside, Daniel started dinner while Lily set the table. She was unusually quiet, arranging forks and knives with exaggerated care. He recognized the behavior. She was working up to something. "Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Why don't I have a mommy like the other kids?" The question landed like a punch. Daniel set down the wooden spoon and turned to face her. She was looking at the table, not at him, her small fingers tracing the edge of a plate. "You do have a mommy," he said carefully. "She's just not here anymore." "But why?" "Because sometimes people get sick in ways doctors can't fix. Your mom loved you more than anything in this world, Lily. She didn't want to leave us." "Do you miss her?" The honest answer was complicated. He missed the idea of her, the future they'd planned. But the sharp edge of grief had dulled over the years into something quieter, more like an old ache than an open wound. He missed having a partner, someone to shoulder the load with him. But Sarah herself? The memories were fading, like photographs left too long in the sun. "I miss who we were going to be," he said finally. "Does that make sense?" Lily considered this. "I think so." They ate spaghetti and talked about easier things. A book Lily was reading, a squirrel that kept stealing from the bird feeder whether pepperoni was better than sausage on pizza. By the time they finished, some of the tension had eased from her small shoulders. Daniel was washing dishes when the doorbell rang. He dried his hands and found Clara Bennett standing on his porch, looking apologetic and slightly embarrassed. She was dressed in jeans and an oversized cardigan, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Without makeup and in the golden evening light, she looked younger than the 40-something he'd assumed. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she said quickly. "But my kitchen sink just started making this horrible grinding noise, and now it won't drain at all. I called a plumber, but the earliest they can come is Thursday, and She trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. "I realize we barely know each other, but Mrs. Patterson mentioned you're handy with repairs, and I'm kind of desperate." Daniel glanced back at Lily, who was watching cartoons in the living room. "Let me get my tools. I'll come take a look." Relief flooded Clara's face. "Thank you, really. I'll pay you, of course. Don't worry about it. Give me 5 minutes." He told Lily where he was going and grabbed his toolbox from the garage. Clara led him through her house, apologizing for the mess. Though as far as Daniel could see, there wasn't any. Books lined the walls in neat rows. The furniture was minimal but thoughtfully arranged. It felt lived in without being cluttered. The kitchen sink was indeed making a horrific noise. "Sounds like something stuck in the disposal," Daniel said, crouching down to open the cabinet beneath. "When did it start?" "About an hour ago. I was washing dishes and it just seized up." Daniel disconnected the disposal unit and pulled it free. Inside, wedged between the blades, was a twist tie and what looked like part of a broken glass. He extracted both carefully and reassembled everything, then ran the disposal for a test. It hummed smoothly. "Should be fine now," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Just be careful what goes down there. These things can't handle much beyond food scraps." "You're a miracle worker." Clara leaned against the counter, her relief palpable. "Seriously, thank you. What do I owe you?" "Nothing. It took 10 minutes. "Daniel, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. We're neighbors. It's what people do. She studied him for a moment, something unreadable crossing her face. Well, at least let me offer you some coffee. I just made a fresh pot. He should have said no. Should have collected his tools and headed back to Lily. But there was something about the way Clara asked, not presumptuous, not flirtatious, just genuinely grateful, that made him pause. Sure, he heard himself say. 1 cup. They sat at her kitchen table, 2 strangers making small talk over coffee that was better than anything Daniel had ever managed to brew at home. Clara told him she was a freelance editor, mostly working on romance novels and memoirs, He told her about his electrical and plumbing work, about inheriting the house, about trying to keep his head above water while raising Lily alone. He didn't mention Sarah. Didn't mention the car accident that had taken both his parents when Lily was just 18 months old, or the heart condition that had claimed Sarah 6 months later. Those stories were heavy, and this moment felt fragile, like something that might shatter if he pushed too hard. Your daughter seems sweet, Clara said. I've seen her in the yard sometimes. She talks to the birds. Daniel smiled despite himself. She thinks they understand her. Maybe they do. Animals are smarter than we give them credit for. The conversation drifted easily, touching on nothing important and everything at once. The weather, the neighborhood, the way the streetlights flickered on their block. When Daniel finally glanced at his watch, 40 minutes had passed. I should get back, he said, standing reluctantly. Lily's probably destroyed the living room by now. Clara walked him to the door. Thank you again. For the sink and the company. Any time. He meant it as a polite platitude, but something in her expression suggested she'd heard it as a promise. The next 2 weeks passed in a familiar rhythm. Daniel worked his rotation of repair jobs, picked Lily up from school, made dinner, helped with homework, and collapsed into bed before starting the cycle again. He was good at routine. Routine was safe. Then Clara's garbage disposal broke again. I swear I didn't put anything weird down there this time, she said when he showed up with his toolbox. It just started making that noise again. Daniel found a small piece of the previous broken glass still wedged in the mechanism. He extracted it and tested the unit. Should be fine now, but if it keeps happening, you might need to replace the whole thing. How much would that cost? Parts and labor? Couple hundred from a professional. I could do it for the cost of the disposal if you want to save some money. Clara hesitated. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness. You're not. I'm offering. She studied him again with that same unreadable expression. Okay, but this time you're definitely staying for coffee. And maybe some banana bread. I made too much and I'm trying not to eat it all myself. The banana bread was exceptional. They sat at the kitchen table again, and this time the conversation went deeper. Clara mentioned her divorce, a bitter ending to a 20-year marriage that had left her wanting to start over somewhere. No one knew her story. Daniel found himself talking about Sarah, about the impossible task of explaining death to a toddler, about the nights he'd sat in Lily's room just watching her sleep because he was terrified something would take her too. That must have been unbearable, Clara said softly. It was. Still is sometimes. But you keep going, because what else can you do? You're stronger than you think. The word settled over him like a blanket. When was the last time someone had said something like that to him? When was the last time anyone had really seen him, not just as Lily's father or the neighborhood handyman, but as a person carrying his own weight? He stayed for 2 cups of coffee that night, then 3 the next time he came over to replace the disposal, then 4 the time after that, when Clara's porch light fixture started flickering. Somewhere along the way, the repairs became excuses. It was Lily who shattered the careful distance they'd been maintaining. Daniel had brought her along one Saturday afternoon when Clara called about a leaky outdoor faucet. The job was simple enough that he'd figured Lily could play in Clara's backyard while he worked. What he hadn't anticipated was his daughter's complete lack of social filter. Miss Clara, how old are you? Lily asked, appearing suddenly at Clara's elbow while Daniel was under the outdoor spigot. Clara blinked, clearly caught off guard. I'm 42. How old are you? 7 3/4. That's a lot older than my daddy. He's only 27. Lily, Daniel called from his position on the ground, mortification heating his face. Maybe don't interrogate Miss Clara about her age. It's fine, Clara said, though she was biting back a smile. I've been interrogated by tougher customers. Lily wasn't finished. Do you have kids? No, I don't. Why not? Don't you like kids? I like kids just fine. I just never had any of my own. Oh. Lily processed this with the serious consideration of a philosopher. That's sad. You'd be a good mom. You smell nice and you make good banana bread. Clara laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her entire face. Well, thank you. That's quite the compliment. Daniel finished the repair and was coiling his hose when Lily launched her next question with the casual brutality only children possess. Miss Clara, how are babies made? The hose slipped from Daniel's hands. Clara's eyes went wide. For a moment, neither adult moved. Clara began, glancing at Daniel for help. That's a great question for later, Lily, Daniel said quickly, scrambling to his feet. How about But I want to know now. Emma at school said her mom told her, but Emma's mom uses a lot of big words I don't understand. Miss Clara's an editor. She's good with words. Clara looked like she was trying very hard not to laugh. Well, that is, your dad should probably. It's from kissing, right? Lily pressed. In movies, when people kiss, they end up with babies. Daniel wanted the earth to open up and swallow him. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. How much more complicated? You and Mommy kissed and then you had me, right? Clara lost the battle with her laughter. It started as a snort she tried to suppress, then erupted into full-bodied laughter that doubled her over. Daniel felt his embarrassment morph into something else, something lighter. You think this is funny? He asked, but he was fighting his own smile. I think, Clara gasped between laughs, that your daughter is going to be a journalist when she grows up. She asks better questions than most adults. Lily beamed, clearly taking this as high praise. So is it from kissing? Daniel sighed. Sure, kiddo, babies come from kissing. We'll discuss the details when you're 30. 30? That's so far away. Exactly. Clara wiped tears from her eyes, her laughter finally subsiding. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't encourage her, but that was amazing. I'm glad my parenting failures amuse you, Daniel said dryly, but there was no heat in it. Something shifted in that moment. The awkwardness that had existed between them, the careful politeness, the respectful distance, crumbled under the weight of shared laughter and Lily's innocent chaos. When Clara invited them to stay for lemonade, Daniel said yes without hesitation. When Lily asked if she could look at Clara's books, Clara led her to the shelves with genuine enthusiasm. They ended up staying for 3 hours. Lily sprawled on Clara's living room floor with a picture book while the adults talked. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from topic to topic without the stilted pauses that had marked their earlier interactions. Clara told them about the ridiculous romance novel she was editing, full of impossible coincidences and purple prose. Daniel found himself laughing harder than he had in months. When they finally left, Lily hugged Clara goodbye without being prompted. I like you, Miss Clara. You should come to our house sometime. Daddy makes really good grilled cheese. I make acceptable grilled cheese, Daniel corrected. He's being modest, Lily stage whispered to Clara. They're actually really good. Clara's smile was warm and genuine. I'd love to try them sometime. Walking back to their house, Lily chattered about the books Clara had let her borrow and whether they could plant flowers like Clara's in their yard. Daniel listened with half his attention, the other half replaying the afternoon. The ease of Clara's company, the way she'd engage with Lily not as an obligation, but with real interest. The moment when their eyes had met over Lily's head and they'd both smiled, sharing some unspoken understanding. He was in dangerous territory. He recognized it with the clarity of someone who'd been alone long enough to know the signs. But for the first time in 3 years, the danger didn't feel like something to run from. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel stood at his bedroom window looking at Clara's house. The lights were still on and what he'd learned was her office. He imagined her at her desk, red pen in hand, marking up some poor author's manuscript. The image made him smile. His phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Got your number from Mrs. Patterson. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to say thanks again for fixing the faucet and for letting Lily educate me on the finer points of reproduction. Clara Daniel stared at the message, then typed a reply. Anytime. Fair warning, though, Lily's just getting started with the hard questions. 3 dots appeared immediately. I can handle it. I edited a memoir by a sex therapist last year. Nothing shocks me anymore. Challenge accepted. Is that a threat, Mr. Carter? More like a promise. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. I'm beginning to suspect I like it. Daniel read the message 3 times before responding. Good night, Clara. Good night, Daniel. He set the phone down and returned to the window. Clara's office light had gone off. A moment later, he saw her silhouette pass by an upstairs window. Her bedroom, probably. She paused there, and though he couldn't see details from this distance, he had the strange feeling she was looking back at his house. The thought should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt like possibility. Summer slid into autumn with the kind of gentle transition that only happened in the Midwest. The air turned crisp, leaves began their slow burn toward gold and red, and Daniel found himself at Clara's house 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes for repairs, a loose doorknob here, a stubborn window there, but increasingly just because. Just because she'd invited him for coffee. Just because Lily wanted to show Clara a drawing. Just because it had become part of his routine, as natural as breathing. They fell into patterns. Sunday afternoons, Clara would come over and they'd bake something with Lily. Cookies, brownies, a disastrous attempt at pie that ended with flour everywhere and laughter that echoed through the house. Wednesday evenings, Daniel would fix dinner and Clara would join them, helping Lily with homework while he cooked. Fridays, after Lily went to bed, they'd sit on Clara's back porch with wine or tea, talking until the stars came out. The neighborhood noticed. Of course they noticed. Mrs. Patterson started making pointed comments about how nice it was to see Daniel moving on. The Hendersons across the street began waving with knowing smiles. At the grocery store, the cashier asked if his girlfriend still liked that fancy coffee brand. Daniel didn't correct any of them. Because what would he say? That Clara was just a friend? The label felt insufficient, too small for what was growing between them. But anything else felt presumptuous, like claiming something he hadn't earned. Clara seemed equally uncertain. She'd touch his arm while laughing, then pull away quickly as if she'd crossed a line. She'd hold his gaze a moment too long, then look away with color in her cheeks. They circled each other like dancers who'd forgotten the steps, each waiting for the other to lead. It was Lily, once again, who forced their hand. "Are you and Miss Clara going to get married?" she asked one night while Daniel tucked her in. He nearly dropped the bedtime storybook. "What? No, I mean, we're friends, sweetheart." Friends who see each other every day? Some friends do that. Lily gave him a look that was far too knowing for a 7-year-old. "Emma's mom says you and Miss Clara are courting." "What's courting?" Daniel closed his eyes. "It's an old-fashioned word for dating." "Are you dating Miss Clara?" "No." "Why not? Don't you like her?" "Of course I like her." "Does she like you?" I think so." "Then why aren't you dating?" Out of the mouths of babes. "It's complicated, Lily." Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain things. She snuggled deeper into her blankets, yawning. "I think you should marry her. She makes you smile more." The observation hit him squarely in the chest. "Does she?" "Mm-hmm. You're happier when she's around?" "I like when you're happy, Daddy." Daniel kissed her forehead, emotion thick in his throat. "I like when you're happy too, sweetheart. Sweet dreams." He sat in the hallway outside her room for a long time after she fell asleep, thinking about happiness, thinking about smiles, thinking about the way his chest felt lighter on the days he knew he'd see Clara. His phone buzzed. "Clara, are you awake?" "Yeah, what's up? Can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." His stomach dropped. The late hour, the serious tone, nothing good started with, "I need to talk to you." Be right there. He checked on Lily one more time, then crossed the yard to Clara's house. She was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket despite the mild night. Her expression was difficult to read. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, climbing the porch steps. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. "I got a call from my mother's neighbor today. Mom's in the hospital. Heart attack. She's stable, but..." Her voice cracked. "She's 3 states away and I haven't seen her in 2 years because of everything with the divorce, and I just... When do you want to leave?" Clara blinked. "What?" "When do you want to leave?" Daniel repeated. If we go tonight, we can be there by morning. I'll drive. Daniel, you can't just... What about Lily? Mrs. Patterson will watch her. She's been offering to babysit for months. Your work can wait. Clara, your mom's in the hospital. Everything else can wait. She stared at him, tears spilling over. You'd really do that? Drive through the night with me? Without question. The dam broke. Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. Daniel held her, feeling the tremors run through her body as she cried. He stroked her hair and murmured meaningless comforts, his heart breaking for her pain and swelling with something he wasn't quite ready to name. When she pulled back, she wiped her eyes roughly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart on you. Don't apologize. Go pack a bag. I'll arrange everything else. 45 minutes later, they were on the road. Mrs. Patterson had been delighted to help, promising to spoil Lily rotten in their absence. Daniel had thrown clothes in a duffel, cleared his schedule, and filled his truck with gas. Clara sat in the passenger seat with her own bag at her feet, staring out at the dark highway. Thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to do this. I know. Why did you? Daniel kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. Because you needed help. Because you'd do the same for me. Because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because the thought of you driving through the night alone, scared and upset, was unbearable. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was thick with emotion. I haven't had someone in my corner like this in a very long time. You do now. The miles rolled past. They talked in fits and starts, long silences punctuated by shared memories or quiet observations. Around 3 a.m, Clara fell asleep against the window, her breathing evening out. Daniel glanced at her periodically, something tender and fierce rising in his chest. Somewhere along this road, between fixing garbage disposals and baking cookies, between coffee and conversation and comfortable silences, he'd fallen. Not the wild, consuming passion of young love. He'd had that with Sarah. This was different, steadier, like a foundation being built brick by patient brick. The question was whether Clara felt the same, and whether either of them was brave enough to risk what they had for what they might become. The hospital came into view as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Daniel touched Clara's shoulder gently. We're here. She woke with a start, disoriented and anxious. Did they call? No news, that's probably good news. They found Clara's mother in the cardiac unit, awake and irritable about the hospital food. The relief on Clara's face was almost painful to witness. She rushed to her mother's bedside, gripping her hand like a lifeline. I'm fine, Clara, her mother said, but her voice was warm. Stubborn heart just needed a reminder to behave itself. Daniel hung back, giving them space. He found the waiting room and collapsed into an uncomfortable chair, exhaustion finally catching up to him. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, Clara was shaking him awake. Hey, she said softly. Mom's asking for you. Me? I told her you drove me through the night. She wants to meet the man who'd do that. Clara's mother was tiny and fierce, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She studied Daniel like a general assessing a soldier. So you're the neighbor, she said. Yes, ma'am. And you drove my daughter 6 hours in the middle of the night. Yes, ma'am. You in love with her? Mother! Clara's face went scarlet, but Daniel didn't look away from the older woman's penetrating gaze. Yes, ma'am. I think I am. The words hung in the air. Clara made a small, startled sound. Her mother's expression softened into something approving. About time someone treated her right, she said. You'll stay for lunch. Hospital food is garbage, but the cafeteria makes a decent turkey sandwich. Daniel finally looked at Clara. She was staring at him with wide eyes, her lips parted in surprise. He offered a tentative smile. I think your mom just gave me orders, he said. I heard. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. Did you mean it? Every word. Her mother made a shooing motion. Go talk in the hallway. I need a nap, and you two are making the monitors beep funny. In the corridor, surrounded by the antiseptic smell and fluorescent lights, Daniel and Clara faced each other. The exhaustion, the emotion, the months of circling, it all crystallized into this single moment. I didn't mean to say it like that, Daniel started. I wanted to. Clara kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or sweep you off your feet passionate. It was soft and tentative and tasted like hospital coffee. But it was real, and when she pulled back, her eyes were shining. I think I love you too, she whispered. Is that crazy? We've only known each other a few months. If it's crazy, we're crazy together. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. What are we doing, Daniel? I don't know. But I'd like to keep doing it if you would. Yeah. Clara laced her fingers through his. I'd like that too. They stayed at the hospital for 3 days while Clara's mother recovered. Daniel slept in waiting room chairs and ate terrible cafeteria food and wouldn't have traded it for anything. He and Clara existed in a bubble where the outside world couldn't quite reach, holding hands in hospital corridors, stealing kisses in the parking garage, talking about everything and nothing in the small hours before dawn. On the drive home, a massive storm system forced them to pull over on an empty stretch of highway. Rain hammered the truck's roof while lightning split the sky. Clara stared out at the deluge, her expression pensive. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked. How different my life would be if I'd met you 15 years ago, before the bad marriage, before all the mistakes. You wouldn't have been you without all that. And I wouldn't have been me. Would you have wanted me 15 years ago, when I was younger? Daniel reached for her hand. I want you now, the person you are today, everything that made you who you are, even the hard parts. That's who I want. Clara turned to him, tears and rainwater mingling on her face. How are you real? I ask myself the same thing about you. The storm raged around them, but inside the truck, wrapped in darkness and honesty, they built something that felt like forever. Not perfect, not without complications, but theirs. When the rain finally eased enough to drive, they headed home to Lily and whatever came next, together. The first thing Daniel noticed when they pulled into the driveway was Lily's face pressed against Mrs. Patterson's front window. The second thing he noticed was the curtain twitching at the Henderson house across the street. By the time he'd helped Clara with her bag, 3 more neighbors had found reasons to be outside, checking mailboxes, watering already watered plants, walking dogs that didn't need walking. Small towns had their charms. Privacy wasn't one of them. Lily burst through Mrs. Patterson's front door before Daniel could knock, launching herself at him with enough force to nearly knock him backward. You're back! Mrs. Patterson made me pancakes every morning and let me stay up late. But I missed you so much. I missed you too, sweetheart. Daniel hugged her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Over her shoulder, he caught Clara's smile, soft and warm. And Miss Clara! Lily transferred her enthusiasm to Clara, who caught her with a small surprised laugh. Is your mom okay? Daddy said she was sick. She's doing much better, thank you for asking. Clara knelt down to Lily's level. She told me to tell you hello. I showed her the picture you drew, and she said you're very talented. Lily beamed. Really? Really? Mrs. Patterson emerged from her house, wiping her hands on a dish towel and watching the scene with undisguised interest. Well, you two look exhausted. Long drive? Very long, Daniel confirmed. Thank you for watching Lily. I owe you. Nonsense, she was delightful company. Mrs. Patterson's gaze flickered between Daniel and Clara, noting the subtle shift in how they stood, closer than before, shoulders aligned like puzzle pieces that had found their fit. I'm glad everything worked out. The weight in those words suggested she wasn't just talking about Clara's mother. They collected Lily's things and said their goodbyes. Daniel, acutely aware of Mrs. Patterson's knowing smile and the way the other neighbors had suddenly become very interested in their gardening. He walked Clara to her door, Lily skipping ahead of them. Welcome to life under a microscope, he said quietly. Hope you're ready for the gossip mill to start churning. Clara glanced around at their audience, then back at him. Let them talk. I'm too tired to care. You say that now. I mean it. She touched his arm briefly, the gesture casual but intimate. I'll see you tomorrow? Counting on it. Inside his own house, Lily chattered non-stop about her adventures with Mrs. Patterson, while Daniel unpacked and tried to process the fact that his life had fundamentally shifted in the span of 3 days. He'd left as Clara's friend and neighbor. He'd returned to something he didn't quite have words for yet. Not quite boyfriend, they were both too old for that term. Partner felt too clinical. The person he was falling in love with? Accurate but unwieldy. "Daddy, you're not listening," Lily accused, tugging on his sleeve. "Sorry, sweetheart. What did you say?" "I said, are you and Miss Clara boyfriend and girlfriend now?" Daniel sat down on the couch, pulling Lily onto his lap. "Would that be okay with you if we were?" She considered this with the gravity of a judge. "Will she come over more?" "Probably. Will she still bake cookies with me?" "I think she'd be sad if you stopped." "Then yes." Lily nodded decisively. "I like her. She's nice to you and she's nice to me. That's what matters." If only it were that simple. But Lily's acceptance loosened something in Daniel's chest he hadn't realized was tight. Whatever challenges lay ahead, at least his daughter was on board. The next morning, Daniel woke to his phone buzzing with messages. His work calendar had exploded during his absence. A backed-up sink at the Morrison house, faulty wiring at the community center, and 3 other jobs he'd promised to handle this week. He groaned and reached for coffee, already calculating how he'd fit everything in. A knock at the door interrupted his mental scheduling. Clara stood on his porch in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, holding a casserole dish. "I made too much breakfast," she said, which they both knew was a lie. "Thought you and Lily might want some." The casserole was still warm, eggs and cheese and vegetables layered in perfect golden abundance. Lily materialized at Daniel's elbow, drawn by the smell. "Is that for us?" she asked hopefully. "If you'll have it," Clara said. "We'll have it," Daniel confirmed, stepping aside to let her in. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to." Clara set the dish on the counter, then turned to face him properly. In the morning light streaming through the kitchen windows, she looked younger, softer. "Is it weird that I missed you? We were literally together for 3 days straight." "If it's weird, then I'm weird too." They smiled at each other like fools while Lily helped herself to breakfast, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. The morning routine absorbed them, getting Lily fed and dressed, packing her lunch, making sure she had her homework. Clara fit into the chaos seamlessly, braiding Lily's hair while Daniel searched for matching socks, handing him the backpack he'd forgotten, while he hunted for his keys. It felt domestic in a way that should have been alarming, but instead felt right, like she'd always been part of this dance. At the school drop-off, Lily hugged them both goodbye, then paused. "Are you picking me up today, Daddy?" "I'll be here." "Can Miss Clara come too?" Daniel glanced at Clara, who looked touched and slightly overwhelmed. "If she wants to." "I'd love to," Clara said softly. Lily grinned and ran off to join her friends, leaving Daniel and Clara standing by his truck in the parking lot. Other parents milled around, some shooting curious glances their way. "You don't have to," Daniel said. "I know you have work." "I want to. Besides, I can edit anywhere. Your kitchen table is as good as mine." They drove back in Daniel's truck, Claire's hand resting on the center console close enough that their fingers brushed with every turn. Neither of them moved away. The rest of the morning passed in comfortable parallel existence. Daniel worked through his emails and scheduled jobs while Clara set up her laptop at his kitchen table, red pen flying across manuscript pages. Occasionally, she'd read him a particularly ridiculous line from whatever romance novel she was editing, and he'd laugh hard enough to lose his place in his own work. Occasionally, he'd curse at a particularly stubborn client who wanted same-day service, and she'd offer sympathetic commentary. It felt like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Around noon, Clara stretched and closed her laptop. "I need a break before my eyes start bleeding. Want to grab lunch?" They ended up at the diner on Main Street, sliding into a booth by the window. The lunch crowd was light, but Daniel still felt the weight of attention from the few occupied tables. Sarah Miller from the post office. Tom Chen, who ran the hardware store. Both watched with interest as Daniel and Clara ordered. "Does this bother you?" Clara asked quietly once the waitress left. "The staring. I'd be lying if I said I loved it, but I'm not ashamed of being here with you. Even though people are going to talk about the age difference?" There it was. The elephant that had been lurking at the edges of every interaction. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand, making the gesture deliberately public. "I'm 27. You're 42. That's 15 years. So what? Some people will think. Some people always think something. Doesn't mean we have to care." Clara studied their joined hands. "Your daughter is 7. I'm 42 and I've never had kids. People are going to assume things, that I'm trying to replace her mother, that I'm using you, that... Clara. Daniel waited until she looked at him. I don't care what people assume. I care about what's real. And what's real is that I haven't felt this way about someone in years, maybe ever. The rest is just noise. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. When did you get so wise? Probably around the same time I started fixing your garbage disposal. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. The tension broke, and they ate lunch like normal people, talking about everything and nothing. But Daniel was aware of the looks, the whispers. He'd been naive to think people wouldn't notice, naive to think it wouldn't matter. The real test came that afternoon at school pickup. Daniel and Clara arrived together, standing slightly apart but close enough that the connection was obvious. Lily ran over with her usual enthusiasm, chattering about her day. Other parents collected their children with smiles and waves. Everything seemed normal until Emma's mother, Jennifer, approached with a tight smile. Clara, right? I don't think we've officially met. I'm Jennifer Walsh. Nice to meet you, Clara said, clearly sensing the undercurrent Daniel had already caught. You're new to the neighborhood, aren't you? Must be nice having Daniel around to help with repairs. Jennifer's tone was light, but her eyes were calculating. He's been such a rock for this community since his wife passed. We all try to look out for him and Lily. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Clara wasn't part of we. Clara was an outsider, potentially a threat. Everyone's been very welcoming, Clara said evenly. Well, small towns can be tricky for newcomers, especially when it comes to established families. Jennifer glanced at Lily, then back at Clara with a pointed look. I'm sure you understand. Daniel had heard enough. Clara's been a great friend to both of us. We're lucky to have her. The word friend tasted like ash in his mouth, but the correction in Jennifer's expression was worth it. She recovered quickly, smile brightening to something more genuine, or at least better faked. Of course. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. We just care about our own, you know. After she left, Clara was quiet on the drive home. Lily filled the silence with stories from school, oblivious to the tension. When they reached the house, she ran inside to get a snack, leaving Daniel and Clara alone in the driveway. She thought I was some kind of predator, Clara said flatly, going after the young widower and his vulnerable daughter. She's a gossip with too much time on her hands. She's not wrong, though, is she? About how it looks. You're young and you're raising a child alone, and I'm the older woman who shows up and makes my life better in every possible way, Daniel interrupted. And makes Lily happy, and makes me feel like I'm not just surviving anymore. That's what you do. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth listening to. Clara's smile was sad. You make it sound simple. It is simple. I like you. You like me. Lily likes you. Everything else is just people trying to complicate something good because they're bored or bitter or both. What about when Lily gets older? When she starts school and other kids say things about her dad's girlfriend being old enough to be his mother? Daniel flinched. That's not fair. It's reality, Daniel. I've thought about this. A lot. The math doesn't get better with time. It gets worse. You'll be 45 when I'm 60. You'll be 60 when I'm 75. That's a problem for future us, Daniel cut in. Right now, today, are you happy? Yes. Do you want this? Us? Yes. But then that's enough. We'll figure out the rest as we go. She wanted to believe him. He could see it in her eyes, the war between hope and fear. But doubt had taken root, watered by Jennifer's poison and the weight of every disapproving look they'd received. The next few weeks were a study in contradictions. In private, things between them deepened. Clara came over most evenings, helping with dinner or homework, or just existing in the same space. They'd progressed from tentative hand-holding to stolen kisses in the kitchen while Lily was distracted. They talked about everything: Clara's divorce, Daniel's grief, their hopes for the future. They were building something real and solid. But in public, the reception was decidedly mixed. Mrs. Patterson remained supportive, often inviting them over for tea and treating their relationship as a foregone positive conclusion. Tom Chen at the hardware store started giving Daniel knowing winks when he came in for supplies. The librarian, Mrs. Rodriguez, told Clara she was good for Daniel in a way that felt like genuine approval. But there were others. The pharmacy tech who asked Clara loudly if she needed hormone replacement therapy recommendations, then glanced meaningfully at Daniel. The church ladies who stopped their conversation when Clara passed, resuming in pointed whispers. The neighbor 2 doors down who mentioned his own mother was 42 and settling down at that age must be such a relief. Each incident was small, paper cuts, not stab wounds, but they accumulated. Daniel did his best to shield Clara from the worst of it, but he couldn't be everywhere, couldn't control what people said when he wasn't around. The worst part was watching her internalize it, watching doubt creep in despite his reassurances. It came to a head on a Friday night. They'd planned dinner at an actual restaurant, their first real date outside the neighborhood. Daniel had made reservations at the nice Italian place one town over, somewhere they could be anonymous. Clara had dressed up, wearing a deep blue dress that made her eyes look like midnight. She looked beautiful and nervous, and Daniel wanted to tell her so 100 times. The dinner itself was perfect. Good food, good wine, good conversation. For 2 hours, they existed in a bubble where nothing mattered except each other. Daniel held her hand across the table. She laughed at his stories about disastrous repair jobs. They talked about taking Lily to the state fair in the fall, about Clara's latest manuscript, about whether they should try growing tomatoes next summer. The bubble burst in the parking lot. Well, isn't this sweet? Daniel turned to find his former brother-in-law, Marcus, standing by a pickup truck with 2 of his friends. Marcus had never been Daniel's biggest fan even when Sarah was alive, and widowhood hadn't improved their relationship. "Marcus," Daniel said evenly, "didn't expect to see you here." Clearly, Marcus's gaze slid to Clara with open disdain. "This your new girlfriend? Robbing the cradle a bit, isn't she?" Clara's hand tightened on Daniel's arm. "We should go." "No, wait, I want to meet her." Marcus stepped closer, alcohol obvious on his breath. "Does Sarah's daughter know you replaced her mother with someone old enough to be her grandmother?" "That's enough," Daniel said sharply. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, my sister's been dead 3 years, and you've already moved on to someone completely inappropriate. What's next? You gonna let this woman play mommy to Lily? You need to leave. Now." But Marcus wasn't done. "Sarah would be ashamed of you, bringing some desperate divorced woman into Lily's life, parading around town like you didn't make vows to my sister." Daniel moved before he consciously decided to, getting between Marcus and Clara. "Don't talk about things you don't understand. Sarah's been gone for 3 years. I mourned her. I still mourn her. But I'm allowed to move forward with my life, and you don't get a say in how I do that. I get a say when it affects my niece. You've seen Lily twice in 3 years. Don't pretend you care about her well-being now." Marcus's friends were tugging him back toward their truck, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Marcus shook them off but didn't advance, just pointed at Daniel with something ugly in his expression. "This won't last," he said. "She's too old for you, and everyone can see it. When she can't keep up anymore, don't come crying to me." They left, tires squealing on pavement. Daniel turned to find Clara hugging herself, face pale in the parking lot lights. "I'm sorry," he said. "He's drunk and bitter, and he had no right." "He's right, though." Clara's voice was small. "About how it looks, about the age difference, about everything." "Clara, well, take me home, please." The drive back was silent and terrible. Daniel tried several times to start a conversation, but Clara stared out the window, shutting him out. When they reached her house, she got out quickly. "Clara, wait. I need to think," she said without looking at him. "I just need to think." She disappeared inside before he could respond. Daniel sat in his truck for a long time, staring at her dark windows. Marcus's words echoed in his head, mixing with every doubtful comment and disapproving look they'd received. For the first time, he let himself truly consider the math Clara had mentioned. 15 years. When he was 60, she'd be 75. When he was 50, she'd be 65. It didn't matter to him now. But would it matter later? Would there come a day when the difference became too much? When her age made his life harder instead of better? The thoughts felt like betrayal even as he had them. Inside his house, Mrs. Patterson was watching Lily. She took one look at Daniel's face and shooed him toward the kitchen. "Sit. I'll make tea." "I'm fine." "You look like someone kicked your dog. Sit." Daniel sat. The tea appeared, along with cookies he didn't want. Mrs. Patterson settled across from him with the patient expression of someone prepared to wait all night. Want to talk about it? Not really. Going to anyway? Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. Why are people so invested in my relationship? Because people are nosy and bored, and they like having something to talk about that isn't their own problems. Mrs. Patterson sipped her tea. What happened? Daniel told her about Marcus, about the parking lot, about Clara's withdrawal. Mrs. Patterson listened without interrupting, her expression growing progressively more irritated. That boy always was a jackass, she said when he finished. Sarah knew it too, even if she wouldn't admit it. He wasn't completely wrong, though. About what? That Claire's older than you? So what? My Harold was 12 years older than me, and we had 47 wonderful years before he passed. She reached across and patted Daniel's hand. Age is just a number until people decide to make it a problem. The question is whether you're going to let them. What if they're right? What if this is a mistake? Is it a mistake if you're both happier than you were before? Is it a mistake if Lily's thriving? Is it a mistake if you wake up every day grateful someone exists? Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. Or is it only a mistake because other people's opinions matter more than your own happiness? Daniel had no answer for that. He collected Lily and went home, but sleep was elusive. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Clara's face in the parking lot, saw the hurt and doubt and fear. He'd promised to protect her from exactly this kind of pain, and he'd failed. The next morning, he texted her, "Can we talk?" The response came an hour later. "I need some time. I'm sorry." Time turned into days. Clara stopped coming over, stopped answering most of his calls. When they did talk, the conversations were brief and painful, full of everything they weren't saying. Lily noticed immediately. "Where's Miss Clara?" she asked at dinner 3 days in. "Did we make her mad?" "No, sweetheart, she's just busy with work." "But she's always busy with work, and she still came over before. Did you make her mad?" Daniel set down his fork. "We had a disagreement. Sometimes adults need space to figure things out." "Are you breaking up?" The question hit like a punch. "I hope not." "Me too." Lily pushed food around her plate. "I like when she's here. The house feels more full, you know." He did know. The house felt cavernous without Clara in it, empty in a way it hadn't been even before she came into their lives. He'd gotten used to her presence, to the sound of her laugh, to the way she hummed while she worked. Her absence was a physical ache. By the end of the week, Daniel had had enough. He showed up at her door Friday evening after Lily was asleep at Mrs. Patterson's for a sleepover. Clara answered, looking exhausted, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "We need to talk," Daniel said. "Really talk. No running away." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. They ended up on her couch, careful space between them. The silence stretched, both of them afraid to be the first to speak and shatter whatever fragile thing was holding them together. Finally, Clara broke. "I can't stop thinking about what your brother-in-law said, about how this looks." "About what people think. Since when do you care what people think? Since I realized those people include Lily's future teachers, your clients, the entire community you've built your life in. I don't want to be the reason they turn on you." "They won't. They already are, Daniel. Open your eyes. Half the town thinks I'm taking advantage of you. The other half thinks you're having a midlife crisis 15 years early. And Lily," her voice cracked, "what happens when she gets older and kids start saying her dad's dating someone who could be his mother? What happens when she's embarrassed by us? Lily loves you. Now. What about in 5 years? 10? What about when I'm 50 and you're 35 and people start assuming I'm your mother instead of your partner?" Clara wiped at her eyes angrily. "I've been through a divorce, Daniel. I know how ugly things can get when the initial feelings fade and reality sets in. I don't want that for us. And I especially don't want that for Lily." Daniel moved closer, erasing the space between them. "You want to know what I think about in 5 years? 10? I think about Lily graduating high school with both of us in the audience. I think about teaching her to drive while you cover your eyes in the passenger seat. I think about Sunday dinners and bad movies and all the ordinary moments that make a life. I think about us together, and I don't care how old either of us is when it happens. That's naive. Maybe. Or maybe you're letting fear make decisions that should be made with your heart. He took her hands, holding them gently. I'm not Sarah's ghost. You're not a replacement. What we have is ours, something new and separate and real. The only way it becomes a mistake is if we let other people convince us it is. Clara leaned into him and Daniel wrapped his arms around her, feeling the tremors run through her body. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet of her living room while the world spun on outside. I'm scared, she whispered finally. Me too. Well, what if we do this and it doesn't work? What if we don't, and we spend the rest of our lives wondering if we gave up on something amazing because we were afraid? She pulled back to look at him, tears tracking down her face. When did you become the brave one? Right around the time I realized losing you scared me more than anything else. She kissed him then, desperate and deep, and Daniel kissed her back with everything he had. When they finally broke apart, her eyes were still wet, but something had shifted. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, how to be with someone again, how to be part of Lily's life without overstepping, how to handle people's judgments. We figure it out together, one day at a time. Is it really that simple? It really is. They talked until 3 a.m, working through fears and doubts and possibilities, making plans and promises, agreeing that they'd face whatever came next as a team, that no one else's opinion mattered more than their own truth. When Daniel finally went home, dawn was breaking over the horizon. He was exhausted and exhilarated and more certain than he'd been about anything in years. This thing with Clara, it was worth fighting for, worth defending, worth choosing every single day. Mrs. Patterson was already awake when he came to collect Lily, knowing Smile firmly in place. You two work it out? Getting there? Good. That girl's good for you. Don't let the bastards grind you down. Daniel laughed, startled. Mrs. Patterson. What? I'm old. I can say what I want. She patted his cheek fondly. Now go get some sleep. You look like death. He did sleep, dreamless and deep. When he woke, there was a text from Clara. Just 3 words, but they meant everything. I choose us. Daniel smiled at his phone, then typed back. Me too, always. Choosing each other turned out to be easier in theory than practice. The words were simple, the commitment genuine, but the world didn't stop judging just because they decided not to care. If anything, their renewed visibility seemed to invite more scrutiny. The first real test came 2 weeks later at the town's autumn festival. Daniel hadn't planned to go. Crowds weren't his thing, and carnival food gave him heartburn. But Lily had been begging for days, and Clara had volunteered to come along. It seemed like a good opportunity to present a united front, to show the town that they weren't hiding or ashamed. Walking through the festival gates with Clara on one side and Lily on the other felt like stepping into a spotlight. Conversations paused as they passed, heads turned. A group of mothers from Lily's school huddled together, whispering behind their hands. Daniel felt Clara stiffen beside him. We can leave if you want, he said quietly. No. Her voice was firm despite the tension in her shoulders. We said we weren't going to run, so we don't run. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, dragged them toward the game booths with single-minded determination. She wanted to win a stuffed elephant that was easily 3 times her size, and no amount of gentle discouragement would dissuade her. Daniel ended up spending $20 trying to knock down rigged milk bottles, while Clara cheered Lily on, both of them laughing at his increasingly frustrated attempts. You know these games are designed to be impossible, right? Clara said after his 5th failed throw. I'm an electrician. I understand physics. I can do this. Your understanding of physics is clearly flawed. Watch and learn. He missed again. Lily dissolved into giggles, and even Daniel had to laugh at his own stubborn pride. The carnival worker, a teenager with bright pink hair, took pity on them and handed Lily the elephant anyway. Your dad tried real hard, she said with a wink. That counts for something. They wandered through the festival, Lily clutching her prize elephant and chattering nonstop about everything she saw. They got cotton candy that stuck to everyone's fingers, watched the pig races, and listened to a surprisingly good cover band playing on the main stage. For stretches of time, Daniel almost forgot about the stares and whispers, almost forgot that this simple family outing was being scrutinized by dozens of eyes. Then Jennifer Walsh appeared with Emma in tow, her smile sharp as cut glass. What a lovely surprise seeing you all here, she said, though nothing about her tone suggested surprise. Emma, look, it's Lily. The girls ran off to compare their carnival prizes, leaving the adults in an uncomfortable triangle. Jennifer's gaze swept over Clara with barely concealed assessment. You know, Clara, I've been meaning to invite you to our book club. We meet every other Thursday. It's mostly women around my age, early 30s, a few in their 40s. Very casual. The emphasis on age wasn't subtle. Though I suppose at your stage of life you might prefer something more mature. Clara's smile never wavered, but Daniel saw her fingers tighten on the strap of her purse. That's kind of you, but I'm not much of a joiner. I get enough reading with my editing work. Oh, that's right. You edit books. Romance novels, someone told me? How fun. The word fun dripped with condescension. Must be nice having such a flexible schedule. Especially helpful when you're dating someone with a young child. Built-in family time. Jennifer, Daniel cut in, his patience evaporating. Was there something you actually wanted? She blinked innocently. Just being friendly. We're all neighbors, after all. I'm sure Clara appreciates being welcomed into the community. I'm sure she'd appreciate it more if the welcome was genuine. Jennifer's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something petty and mean underneath. I'm just looking out for everyone's best interests, Daniel. Lily's especially. Children need stability, and these kinds of unconventional relationships can be confusing for them. The only thing confusing, Lily, is why adults can't mind their own business, Clara said quietly, but with steel in her voice. My relationship with Daniel is none of your concern. Neither is my age, my career, or how I spend my time. If you have an actual issue with me beyond the fact that I exist, I'd appreciate you saying it directly instead of hiding behind fake concern for a child you barely know. The silence that followed was profound. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Around them, several people had stopped pretending not to listen. Well, Jennifer said finally, recovering her composure, I can see why you two get along. Neither of you seems to care much about propriety or what people think. You're absolutely right, Daniel said. We don't. Glad we cleared that up. He took Clara's hand deliberately, making the gesture visible to everyone watching, and walked away. His heart was pounding, and he could feel Clara shaking slightly, but neither of them looked back. They found Lily and Emma playing together near the petting zoo, their innocent friendship untainted by adult complications. Emma's mother appeared a moment later, calling her daughter away with a tight expression. Emma protested, but Jennifer was firm, shooting one last withering look at Clara before disappearing into the crowd. What was that about? Lily asked, watching her friend go. Just grown-up stuff, Daniel said. Nothing for you to worry about. But Lily wasn't fooled. She looked between Daniel and Clara with those too perceptive eyes. Did that lady say something mean about Miss Clara? Clara knelt down to Lily's level. Some people have a hard time understanding when things are different from what they're used to. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with being different. It just means they need time to adjust. But you're not different. You're just you. Exactly right. Clara hugged her, and Daniel saw the emotion flash across her face. You're a very smart girl. You know that? They left the festival shortly after, the joy of the afternoon tarnished but not destroyed. In the truck on the way home, Lily fell asleep clutching her elephant, exhausted from excitement and sugar. Daniel and Clara drove in silence, processing what had happened. I knew it would be hard, Clara said finally, but knowing and experiencing are different things. She was out of line. She was honest. Maybe not kind, but honest. That's what people think, Daniel, that I'm some older woman trying to insert myself into a ready-made family because I couldn't create one of my own. That's not... I know it's not true. You know it's not true. But perception matters, especially in a small town. Clara stared out the window at the passing houses. I don't want Lily to lose friends because their parents disapprove of me. Then their parents are idiots, and those kids weren't real friends anyway. That's easy to say when it's not your 7-year-old being excluded at recess. Daniel didn't have a good answer for that. The thought of Lily being hurt because of choices he'd made was almost unbearable, but the thought of giving up Clara to prevent that hurt was equally impossible. At home, he carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed without waking her. When he came back downstairs, Clara was sitting on his couch looking small and defeated. I should go, she said, but she didn't move. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Stay. Daniel? Just for a little while, please. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. They sat in the quiet of his living room, the house settling around them with familiar creaks and sighs. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one, pushing back the autumn darkness. I keep trying to imagine how this ends, Clara said quietly. Best case scenario. We make it work despite everything. The gossip, the age difference, all of it. Lily grows up with me as part of her life. Maybe she even comes to think of me as, I don't know, something more than her dad's girlfriend. And then what? Then we're happy. Isn't that enough? What about when I'm 60 and you're 45? When people start asking if you're my son instead of my partner? When I need reading glasses and joint medication and you're still young enough that people wonder why you're wasting your life on someone old? You're catastrophizing. I'm being realistic. She pulled away to look at him. I love you, Daniel. I didn't mean to, and I fought it as long as I could, but I do. And because I love you, I have to think about your future, about Lily's future, about whether me being in the picture makes those futures better or worse. The words hit him like a physical blow. She loved him. She'd said it out loud, made it real, and in the same breath, she was already talking about letting him go. You love me, he said, focusing on that instead of the rest. Of course I love you. How could I not? You're kind and patient, and you make me laugh. You see me as a whole person, not just my mistakes or my age or my failures. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter. To me. To Lily. That's not going to change because some bitter woman at a carnival decided to be cruel. But it could change, Clara insisted, when the reality of our situation sets in. When you realize what you're giving up by being with me. When younger, more appropriate options present themselves. Stop. Daniel took her face in his hands, making her look at him. I don't want younger. I don't want more appropriate. I want you, exactly as you are. Yes, you're 15 years older than me. Yes, that makes some people uncomfortable. I don't care. I love you too, Clara. Not despite the age difference, not because of it, just because of who you are. Tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. You say that now, I'll say it tomorrow, and the day after, and every day after that for as long as you'll listen. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of losing this, of losing you, than I am of anything else. She kissed him back, desperate and clinging, and they held each other like the world was trying to pry them apart. Maybe it was. Maybe it would succeed eventually. But not tonight. Not while they could still choose each other. The following week brought an unexpected ally. Daniel was replacing a water heater at the community center when Pastor Michael found him in the basement. Despite the title, Michael was only a few years older than Daniel and had never been one for hellfire sermons. He ran the center's food bank and youth programs with quiet efficiency and genuine compassion. Got a minute? Michael asked, leaning against a support beam. Sure. This thing is fighting me anyway. Daniel set down his wrench and wiped his hands. What's up? Wanted to talk to you about the whispers, about you and Clara. Daniel's guard went up immediately. If you're here to tell me it's inappropriate, I'm here to tell you it's not. Michael held up his hands. I've seen you two together. I've seen how Lily lights up around Clara. I've also seen the way certain members of this community have been treating you both, and I don't like it. The tension in Daniel's shoulders eased slightly. That's not what I expected you to say. People make assumptions. They see age gaps, and they assign narratives that might not be true. They forget that love doesn't come with an instruction manual or acceptable parameter guidelines. Michael smiled. My parents had a 16-year gap. My father was younger, my mother older. They got married despite everyone telling them it was a terrible idea. They had 43 years together before my father passed. Best love story I've ever witnessed. I didn't know that. Not many people do. Point is, the math doesn't matter nearly as much as the connection. And from what I've seen, you and Clara have something real. Michael paused. I'm planning to say something at this week's community meeting, not specifically about you two, but about judgment and grace and remembering that everyone's journey looks different. Thought you should know. Daniel felt something tight in his chest loosen. Thank you. That means more than you know. We're supposed to look out for each other in this town. Sometimes that means protecting people from the town itself. Michael clapped him on the shoulder. Hang in there. The noise will die down eventually. It always does. After he left, Daniel stood in the basement, feeling marginally more hopeful. One voice of support wouldn't silence all the critics, but it was something. A reminder that not everyone had already decided their relationship was doomed. He shared the conversation with Clara that evening over dinner at her place. She'd made pasta from scratch, the kitchen smelling like garlic and fresh basil, and they ate at her small table while rain pattered against the windows. That was kind of him, Clara said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. Unexpected, but kind. Made me realize we might have more people in our corner than we think. They're just quieter than the critics. The critics always are louder. Clara set down her fork, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about what you said, about not letting fear make our decisions. And you're right. I've spent so much of my life being afraid, of failure, of judgment, of not being enough. I let that fear drive me into a marriage I knew was wrong. Let it keep me there long past the expiration date. Let it convince me I deserved the misery because I'd made my bed. She reached across the table for his hand. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. I don't want to let fear convince me to walk away from something good. Does that mean you're all in? I'm terrified. But yes, I'm all in. Daniel stood and pulled her out of her chair, kissing her with all the relief and love and certainty he felt. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for a moment the rest of the world ceased to exist. The kiss deepened, turned into 2, then 3. They stumbled toward her couch, mouths never breaking contact, and Clara pulled him down beside her. Her hands found the hem of his shirt, and Daniel's breath caught. Lily, he managed between kisses. She's at Mrs. Patterson's, but I need to pick her up in an hour. Then we have an hour, Clara murmured against his lips. They made love on her couch like teenagers, urgent and desperate and slightly awkward. It wasn't perfect or graceful, but it was real and raw and theirs. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Clara's head on Daniel's chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. I need to tell you something, Clara said quietly. About my marriage. About why it ended. Daniel went still, listening. His name was Robert. We met in college, got married young. Everyone said we were perfect together. Similar backgrounds, similar goals, similar everything. Turns out similar isn't the same as compatible. She took a shaky breath. He wanted children. I thought I did too. We tried for years, fertility treatments, specialists, the works. Nothing worked. And somewhere in all that failure, we forgot how to be anything except two people united in disappointment. I'm sorry. The worst part was, I wasn't even that devastated when it became clear it wouldn't happen. I felt guilty that I wasn't more heartbroken. What kind of woman doesn't grieve when she can't have children? Clara's voice was thick with old shame. Robert took it as proof that I'd never really wanted them, that I'd been lying to him, to myself. Maybe he was right. I don't know anymore. Hey, Daniel tilted her face up to look at him. There's no right way to feel about something like that. No one gets to tell you how you should grieve or what you should want. Robert did. His family did. They made me feel broken, defective, like my worth was tied to my ability to reproduce, and since I couldn't, I was worthless. Tears tracked down her face. When we divorced, his mother told me I'd wasted the best years of his life, that I'd robbed him of the family he deserved. I started believing it. That's the cruelest thing I've ever heard. It's why I'm so worried about Lily, about being part of her life. What if she grows up and feels like I tried to replace her mother? What if people convince her that's what I'm doing? What if... Clara, stop. Daniel kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her trembling lips. Lily adores you. She doesn't see you as a replacement for Sarah. She sees you as Clara, someone who bakes cookies with her and braids her hair and makes her father happy. That's all. That's enough. You make it sound so simple. Because it is. Everyone else wants to complicate it with their own baggage and insecurities. But the actual relationship, you, me, Lily, that's straightforward. We care about each other. We make each other happy. Everything else is noise. Clara buried her face in his chest, and Daniel held her while she cried. Not the desperate tears from before, but something more cathartic. The release of old pain and new hope tangled together. When he finally left to collect Lily, Clara walked him to the door. She looked lighter somehow, like confessing her past had lifted a weight she'd been carrying too long. "Thank you," she said, "for listening, for not running. Thank you for trusting me with it." He kissed her one more time, soft and sweet. "See you tomorrow? Every tomorrow?" The next month brought small victories and familiar challenges in equal measure. Michael made good on his promise, delivering a sermon about judgment and grace that had several congregation members squirming in their seats. Mrs. Patterson started loudly defending Daniel and Clara to anyone who would listen, her elderly authority carrying surprising weight. Tom at the hardware store banned Jennifer Walsh from the shop after she made a particularly nasty comment about Clara within earshot, but not all the news was good. Lily came home from school crying because a boy in her class said his mother said that Clara was trying to be her new mommy, and it was weird. One of Daniel's regular clients canceled their maintenance contract, citing moral concerns in the termination email. The Henderson family across the street stopped waving when they drove past. Each incident was a test. Each time, Daniel and Clara had to choose whether to let it matter, whether to let other people's opinions shape their reality. Most days, they chose not to. Some days, the weight of judgment felt too heavy to ignore. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source. Daniel's parents had left him more than just the house. They'd left a trust fund for Lily's education and a small investment account Daniel had mostly ignored. When he finally got around to meeting with the financial advisor, a stern woman named Margaret, who'd managed his parents' money for decades, he was prepared for another lecture about his life choices. Instead, Margaret took one look at him and said, "You look happy, happier than I've seen you in years." The observation caught him off guard. Yeah, I am. That neighbor of yours, the editor?" Word really did travel fast in small towns. "Clara, yes. Good for you. Your mother would have liked her." Daniel blinked. "You think so?" "Your mother was many things, but judgmental wasn't one of them. She cared about character and kindness, not arbitrary numbers. If this Clara makes you happy and treats your daughter well, that would have been enough." Margaret pulled up some documents on her computer. "Now, let's talk about Lily's college fund and whether you've been contributing properly." The rest of the meeting was financial talk that went over Daniel's head, but he left feeling validated in a way he hadn't expected. His mother would have liked Clara. The thought settled warm in his chest, easing an anxiety he hadn't realized he was carrying. He told Clara about it that evening while they cooked dinner together in his kitchen. She was chopping vegetables while he handled the meat, moving around each other with the ease of long practice. "Your mother sounds like she was a wonderful person," Clara said softly. "She was. Stubborn as hell, but wonderful. She would have appreciated your directness. She didn't have patience for people who hid what they meant. I wish I could have met her. Met them both." "Me too." Daniel paused, considering. "My father would have grilled you about your intentions, then offered you whiskey, and told embarrassing stories about me as a kid. My mother would have fed you until you couldn't move and asked pointed questions about your life philosophy. Together, they would have been exhausting and lovely." Clara laughed. "They sound amazing." "They were, and they would have loved watching me be happy again. That's all they ever really wanted, for me and Lily to be okay." "Are you? Okay?" Daniel looked at her, really looked. At the woman who'd walked into his life with a broken garbage disposal and stayed for everything that came after. Who loved his daughter and challenged his assumptions and made him believe in second chances. Who was brave enough to stay despite the gossip and fear and doubt. "Yeah," he said, "I really am." That weekend, they took Lily to the state fair they'd talked about months ago. It was a 3-hour drive to the city, and they made a whole day of it. Rides and fried food and agricultural exhibits that Lily found fascinating. They held hands walking through the crowds, and Daniel noticed it didn't feel revolutionary anymore. It didn't feel like a statement. It just felt natural. At the Ferris wheel, Lily insisted all three of them ride together. They squeezed into the small gondola, Lily between them, and rose slowly into the evening sky. The fairgrounds spread out below, glittering with lights and alive with distant music. "This is perfect," Lily announced, completely content. "I love when we're all together like this." Clara and Daniel exchanged glances over her head, both fighting smiles. Me too, sweetheart, Daniel said. Me three, Clara added. As the wheel carried them higher, Daniel felt something settle into place. The gossip would continue. The judgment wouldn't magically disappear. There would be more Jennifers and skeptical relatives and people who couldn't understand why two people with a 15-year age gap would choose each other. But sitting in that gondola with the two people who mattered most, watching the sun sink below the horizon in shades of orange and pink and gold, Daniel realized something crucial. He didn't need everyone to understand. He didn't need approval or validation from people whose opinions didn't shape his daily life. He just needed this, needed Clara's hand in his, and Lily's chatter filling the spaces between them. Needed the quiet confidence that they were building something real and good despite the obstacles. The wheel began its descent, carrying them back down to earth and whatever came next. Daniel was ready for it. They all were. The contentment Daniel felt on the Ferris wheel lasted exactly 4 days. On Thursday afternoon, he was replacing a circuit breaker at the elementary school when Principal Chen asked him to step into her office. The serious expression on her face made his stomach drop before she even spoke. Mr. Carter, we need to discuss something that's come to our attention regarding Lily. Daniel set down his toolbox and followed her, his mind racing through possibilities. Had Lily pushed another student? Failed a test? The principal's office smelled like old books and vanilla air freshener, a combination that instantly transported him back to his own childhood disciplinary meetings. Mrs. Chen closed the door and gestured to a chair. Please, sit. This is somewhat delicate. Is Lily okay? Did something happen? Lily is fine physically. However, we've received some concerns from other parents about her home situation. Mrs. Chen folded her hands on her desk, clearly uncomfortable. Specifically about the woman who's been helping with pickup and drop-off. Clara Bennett. Every muscle in Daniel's body went rigid. What about her? Several parents have expressed worry about the appropriateness of having an unrelated adult in such close proximity to the children. They've asked that we require background checks for anyone who isn't an immediate family member participating in school activities. Clara has never participated in school activities. She's picked Lily up twice when I had emergency jobs. That's it. I understand, and I want to be clear that this isn't coming from the school administration. We have no concerns about Ms. Bennett, but the policy these parents are suggesting would affect everyone, and they're using your situation as the catalyst. Mrs. Chen's expression was genuinely apologetic. I'm telling you this as a courtesy, so you're not blindsided when it comes up at the next PTA meeting. Daniel felt rage building in his chest, hot and sharp. Let me guess. Jennifer Walsh is leading this charge. I can't discuss which parent specifically, but I think you can draw your own conclusions. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Daniel, I've known you since Lily started here. You're a good father, and from what I've observed, Miss Bennett has been nothing but positive in Lily's life. But I also have to navigate parent politics, and right now those politics are putting pressure on the school board. So what are you saying, that Clara can't pick up Lily anymore? I'm saying that there may be new policies implemented soon that could make things more complicated. I wanted you to be prepared. Mrs. Chen leaned forward, her voice dropping. Between you and me, this is nonsense. But it's nonsense with momentum, and that makes it dangerous. Daniel left the school feeling like he'd been punched. He sat in his truck for a long time, gripping the steering wheel and trying to calm down enough to drive. They were going after Clara now, not just with whispers and social exclusion, but with actual policy changes designed specifically to limit her involvement in Lily's life. He didn't tell Clara immediately, couldn't figure out how to frame it in a way that wouldn't sound like the world was conspiring against them, even though it increasingly felt like it was. Instead, he picked up Lily from school himself and took her for ice cream, needing the normalcy of her chatter to ground him. Daddy, you're being weird, Lily observed, swinging her legs from the tall chair at the ice cream parlor. Did something bad happen? Just a long day, sweetheart. But is it about Miss Clara? Because Emma's mom has been saying mean things about her again. Emma told me her mom said Miss Clara is trying to steal you away. Daniel's spoon clattered against his bowl. Steal me away from what? I don't know. That's what Emma said. Lily frowned, considering. I told Emma that was stupid because you can't steal people. People aren't things. And Miss Clara wouldn't want to steal you anyway because you're already hers. The simple clarity of child logic made Daniel's heart ache. You're right, Miss Clara isn't trying to steal anything. She's just part of our family now. I know that. But Emma's mom doesn't. She thinks Miss Clara is bad because she's old and divorced. Lily said it matter-of-factly, like she was reporting the weather. Emma says her mom says divorced people are broken. Emma's mom is wrong about a lot of things. Daniel pushed his ice cream around, appetite gone. You know Miss Clara isn't bad, right? Or broken? Of course not. She's the best. Lily paused, then added quietly, sometimes I pretend she's my mom. Is that okay? The question hit Daniel like a freight train. What do you mean, sweetheart? Like, when we're all together doing stuff. I pretend we're a normal family, with a mom and a dad and a kid. I know she's not really my mom, and I know my real mom is dead, but she trailed off, looking uncertain. Is it bad to pretend? Daniel pulled Lily into his lap, not caring that they were in public or that ice cream was dripping onto his shirt. It's not bad at all. Miss Clara loves you very much, and if you want to think of her as family, that's okay. That's more than okay. Do you think she'd want to be my mom? Like, for real? I think she'd be honored to be whatever you need her to be. Lily hugged him tight, and Daniel felt the weight of responsibility crush down on his shoulders. He was making choices that affected his daughter in ways he couldn't fully predict. What if this thing with Clara did fall apart? What if Lily got hurt? What if he was being selfish, prioritizing his own happiness over his daughter's stability? That night, after Lily was in bed, Daniel finally told Clara about the school meeting. They were sitting on his back porch, the October air crisp enough to need jackets. Clara listened without interrupting, her face growing progressively more pale. They want to implement a policy because of me, she said flatly when he finished. They want to make it harder for you to have help because they don't approve of who's helping. It's not about you specifically. Don't. Clara's voice was sharp. Don't try to soften this. It's absolutely about me. Jennifer and her little army have decided I'm a threat, and they're using bureaucracy to push me out. She stood up, pacing the small porch. This is exactly what I was afraid of. That my presence in your life would make things harder for you and Lily. We can fight this. The policy isn't implemented yet. I can go to the next PTA meeting, make a case, and say what? That your girlfriend who's old enough to be mistaken for your mother should be allowed around children without question. That'll go over well. Clara, I'm tired, Daniel. She stopped pacing, and in the porch light she looked exhausted, defeated. I'm tired of fighting. Tired of defending our relationship to people who've already made up their minds. Tired of worrying that every choice we make is going to blow back on Lily. So what are you saying? Clara was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark yard. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying, maybe everyone else is right. Maybe this is too complicated. Maybe I should... Don't finish that sentence. Daniel stood, moving to block her escape route. Don't you dare say you should leave. Why not? It would solve everything. The gossip would die down. That ridiculous policy would lose its momentum. Lily wouldn't have to deal with her classmates saying horrible things about her family. Lily would lose someone she loves, someone who makes her happy. You heard what Mrs. Chen said. They have no actual concerns about you. This is just politics and pettiness. Politics and pettiness that affect real things, real policies, Lily's real social life. Clara's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I love you both too much to be the reason your lives get harder. You're the reason our lives are better. Don't you see that? Yes, some people are making it difficult. Some people will always make it difficult. But the actual relationship, me, you, Lily, that's good. That's worth fighting for. Is it? Clara challenged. Is it worth Lily potentially losing friends? Worth you losing clients? Worth constant scrutiny and judgment everywhere you go? At what point does love stop being worth the cost? Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. You really want to know? Love stops being worth it when being without the person hurts more than being with them. When the cost of staying exceeds the cost of leaving. We're not there, Clara. We're not even close. You say that now, but what about in 6 months? A year? When more policies get implemented and more clients drop you and Lily starts getting seriously ostracized at school? Clara wiped at her eyes angrily. I can't watch you sacrifice your life for me. I won't. Then what do you suggest? We just give up? Let Jennifer Walsh and people like her dictate our happiness? I don't know. The frustration in Clara's voice cracked into something raw. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that I'm drowning in guilt every time something bad happens because of me. Every time Lily comes home sad, or you lose work, or someone looks at us like we're committing some kind of crime just by existing together. Daniel pulled her into his arms, feeling her resistance before she finally collapsed against him. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the night grew colder around them. I need time, Clara said eventually, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I need to think about what's best. For everyone. Promise me you won't make any decisions tonight. Promise me you'll sleep on it. She pulled back to look at him, her face streaked with tears. Okay, I promise. But when she left a few minutes later, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her walk away for good. He stood on his porch long after her lights went out, trying to figure out how everything had unraveled so quickly. The next morning brought no relief. Clara texted that she needed a few days to herself, and Daniel had to respect that even though it felt like slowly bleeding out. He threw himself into work, taking every job that came his way, keeping his hands busy so his mind couldn't spiral. Lily noticed Clara's absence immediately. Is Miss Clara sick? She's just busy with work, sweetheart. Is she mad at us? No, baby, she's not mad. Then why hasn't she come over? Daniel had no good answer for that. He deflected with promises of weekend plans and new activities, but Lily wasn't fooled. She grew quiet and withdrawn, spending more time in her room than usual. The house felt cavernous and cold without Clara's presence to fill it. On Saturday, Daniel took Lily to the library, desperate for something to break the monotony of missing Clara. They were browsing the children's section when Mrs. Rodriguez, the librarian, approached with a warm smile. Daniel, Lily, so good to see you both. We just got in some new books I think you'd love, she said to Lily, guiding her toward a display. While Lily was distracted, Mrs. Rodriguez turned to Daniel with a more serious expression. I heard about the PTA situation. For what it's worth, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. You and me both. I also wanted to tell you something. Clara came in earlier this week. She was researching editing jobs in other cities. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes were kind, but worried. I thought you should know. The words hit like a physical blow. Other cities. Clara was planning to leave. The thought had been abstract before, a fear without concrete evidence. Now it was real. Thank you for telling me, Daniel managed. He got through the rest of the library visit on autopilot, checking out books he didn't register and smiling responses he didn't mean. In the truck, Lily asked if they could drive past Clara's house on the way home. I just want to see if her car is there, she said. I miss her. Daniel's heart broke a little more. Me too, sweetheart. Clara's car was in the driveway, but the house looked quiet and closed off. Daniel almost kept driving, almost respected the space she'd asked for. But Lily's sad face in the rearview mirror made the decision for him. Want to go say hi? He asked. Lily's face lit up. Really? Really, just a quick visit. Clara answered the door looking like she hadn't slept well in days. Her eyes widened when she saw them, something complicated crossing her face, joy and pain and guilt all tangled together. Hi, Lily said, suddenly shy. We missed you. Clara's composure crumbled. She knelt down and pulled Lily into a fierce hug. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. Are you coming back? To our house? Clara looked up at Daniel over Lily's head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know, Lily. It's complicated. But you love us, right? And we love you? Of course I love you. Both of you. Then why is it complicated? Lily pulled back, her own eyes wet. In my books, when people love each other, they find a way to be together. That's how stories work. Real life isn't always like books, honey. But it should be. The good parts should be. Lily wiped her eyes. You make my daddy happy, and you make me happy. Why isn't that enough? Clara looked at Daniel helplessly, and he saw his own anguish reflected in her expression. How could they explain adult fears and social pressures to a 7-year-old who only understood love in its purest form? Can I talk to your dad alone for a minute? Clara asked gently. You can wait in the living room. There are new books on the coffee table. Once Lily was out of earshot, Clara stood and faced Daniel properly. I've been looking at jobs in other places. I'm sure you've heard. Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned it. I wasn't trying to hide it. She wrapped her arms around herself. I needed to know what my options were. What would happen if I did leave? And what did you find? That there are editing jobs everywhere, that I could start over again somewhere no one knows my history or judges my choices. Claire's voice cracked. That it would be easy to run away. But I'd be running from the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'd be leaving behind a little girl who's already lost too many people she loves. Clara looked toward the living room where Lily was quietly reading. She asked if I wanted to be her mom the other day. Did she tell you that? She told me she pretends you are. I don't know how to do this, Daniel. I don't know how to be a mother to a child who already had one. I don't know how to love you without hurting your life. I don't know how to stay without feeling like I'm being selfish. Daniel stepped closer, taking her hands. You know what I think? I think you're so used to people telling you you're not enough that you've started believing it. Your ex-husband, his family, the people in this town, they've convinced you that you're somehow less than. But you're not, Clara. You're everything. I'm 42 years old with no children, a failed marriage, and a job I can do from anywhere. What exactly am I bringing to this relationship that makes it worth all the trouble? You're bringing yourself, your kindness, your humor, your strength, the way you braid Lily's hair and make her feel special, the way you challenge me to be better, the way you've shown me that life doesn't have to be about just surviving. It can be about actually living. Daniel pulled her closer. You think you're a burden, but you're the opposite. You're the reason we're both happier than we've been in years. What about the PTA policy? What about Jennifer and her campaign against me? We fight it, together. We show up at that meeting and we make our case, not as defensive targets, but as people who have every right to live our lives the way we choose. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. I'm not asking you to be perfect or to have all the answers. I'm just asking you to stay, to trust that we can figure the rest out as we go. Clara closed her eyes, fresh tears escaping. I'm so scared of letting you down, of letting Lily down. The only way you could let us down is by giving up on us. From the living room, Lily called out, Are you guys done talking? Because I found a book about a princess who fights dragons, and I think you'll both like it. Clara laughed through her tears. We should probably go see this dragon book. Is that a yes? You're staying. She looked at him for a long moment, fear and hope warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. I'm staying. I'm terrified, and I don't know how this ends, but I'm staying. Daniel kissed her, tasting salt and relief. When they broke apart, Lily was standing in the doorway with the book clutched to her chest and a knowing smile on her face. I knew you'd work it out, she said. Can we read the book now? They spent the afternoon in Clara's living room, all three of them squeezed onto the couch while Lily read aloud about brave princesses and fierce dragons. It felt like coming home after a long journey, like everything had been realigned to its proper place. That evening, Daniel called Mrs. Chen and asked for details about the next PTA meeting. If they were going to face this, they'd face it head on. No more hiding or hoping the problem would go away on its own. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. Daniel spent the days leading up to it trying to figure out what to say, how to articulate why his relationship with Clara was nobody's business but his own without sounding defensive or angry. Clara helped him prepare, role-playing different scenarios and anticipated questions. What if they ask about our age difference directly, she asked during one of their practice sessions. I'll tell them it's irrelevant. The consenting adults don't need to justify their relationships based on arbitrary numbers. What if they bring up my divorce? I'll ask them how that's relevant to my daughter's education. What if they say I'm a bad influence? Daniel set down his notes and pulled her close. Then I'll tell them they don't know what they're talking about, that you're one of the best influences in Lily's life, that she's happier, more confident, and more loved because you're in it. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. You make it sound so simple. Because it should be. We're not doing anything wrong, Clara. We're just living our lives and loving each other. If other people have a problem with that, it's their problem, not ours. Thursday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Daniel had arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch Lily, not wanting her anywhere near the potential ugliness. Clara met him at the school, dressed professionally in slacks and a blazer, her hair pulled back. She looked nervous, but determined. The cafeteria was packed. Apparently word had spread about the proposed policy and its true target, and people had come either to support or oppose it. Daniel saw friendly faces scattered through the crowd. Tom from the hardware store, Mrs. Rodriguez, Pastor Michael, and several others. But he also saw Jennifer Walsh holding court in the front row, surrounded by her allies. Principal Chen called the meeting to order and worked through routine business, fundraiser updates, calendar changes, volunteer opportunities. Then came the main event. "We have a proposed policy change to discuss," Mrs. Chen said, her voice carefully neutral. "Several parents have suggested we require background checks for any non-family members who participate in school-related activities or regular pickup and drop-off. The floor is open for discussion." Jennifer Walsh's hand shot up immediately. "I'd like to speak in favor of this policy. Our children's safety should be our top priority, and we simply don't know enough about the people who are given access to our kids. This isn't about targeting anyone specifically. It's about protecting everyone." The lie was so smooth Daniel almost believed it himself. Almost. Another parent spoke up, echoing Jennifer's concerns. Then another. The language was carefully crafted to sound reasonable. Who could argue against child safety? But the underlying message was clear. They wanted Clara out. Finally, Daniel raised his hand. Mrs. Chen looked relieved to call on him. "I'm Daniel Carter, and I think we all know this policy isn't really about background checks or safety. It's about controlling who people choose to have in their lives." He stood so everyone could see him, so they'd have to look him in the eye while judging him. "My girlfriend Clara has been part of my daughter's life for several months now. She's picked Lily up from school exactly twice, both times because I had emergency work calls. She's never volunteered here, never attended a school function, never done anything that would require the kind of oversight this policy suggests." "But she could," Jennifer interjected. "That's the point. We need protections in place before something happens, not after." "Protection from what exactly?" Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "From a woman who's passed every actual background check required by law? From someone who's been nothing but kind and supportive to my daughter? Or are we protecting children from the scandal of adults in age gap relationships?" The room went quiet. Someone coughed. Jennifer's face flushed red. "This isn't about your relationship," she started. "Yes, it is. Let's be honest. This entire policy proposal is because you and others don't approve of my personal life. You don't like that I'm dating someone 15 years older than me. You don't like that she's divorced. You've decided she's somehow inappropriate. And instead of just admitting your prejudice, you're hiding behind concern for children." Pastor Michael stood. "I'd like to speak, if that's okay." Mrs. Chen nodded, looking grateful for the interruption. "I've known Daniel since he moved back here with Lily, after his wife passed. I've watched him struggle and grow and do his absolute best to raise his daughter right. I've also gotten to know Clara Bennett over the past few months." Michael's voice carried authority. "She's intelligent, kind, and genuinely cares about this community. The fact that she's older than Daniel is irrelevant to her character or her positive influence on his family. This proposed policy is discriminatory, and it's being used to target specific people rather than address any actual safety concern." More people spoke, some in support of Daniel and Clara, others hemming and hawing about safety protocols. Tom from the hardware store gave an impassioned speech about minding your own business. Mrs. Rodriguez talked about judging people on their actions rather than their demographics. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. An older woman Daniel vaguely recognized stood near the back. "My name is Patricia Simmons, and I'm Emma Walsh's grandmother. I want to apologize to Mr. Carter and Miss Bennett for my daughter's behavior. I've watched this vendetta unfold, and I'm ashamed." She looked directly at Jennifer. "My late husband was 20 years older than me. We had 53 wonderful years together before he passed. The idea that age difference disqualifies love is not only wrong, it's cruel. I'm voting against this policy, and I encourage others to do the same." Jennifer looked like she'd been slapped. The room erupted in whispered conversations, people turning to their neighbors to debate and discuss. Mrs. Chen had to call for order twice. When the vote finally came, the policy was defeated by a narrow margin. Not overwhelming, but enough. Daniel felt the tension drain from his shoulders even as he knew this wasn't over. They'd won this battle, but the war of public opinion would continue. After the meeting, several people approached to offer support or apologize for the whole situation. Patricia Simmons hugged Clara and whispered something that made her tear up. Pastor Michael clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Even Mrs. Chen pulled them aside to express her relief at the outcome. Outside in the parking lot, Jennifer Walsh stood alone beside her car, her allies having scattered. She watched Daniel and Clara with something that might have been regret or might have been resentment. It was hard to tell in the dim light. "You won," she called out. "Congratulations." "This wasn't about winning," Daniel replied. "It was about being allowed to live our lives." Jennifer shook her head. "You really think this is over? That people will just accept this now?" "I think people will do whatever they're going to do, and we'll deal with it, together." She got in her car without another word, leaving them standing under the parking lot lights. Clara turned to Daniel, her expression complex. "That was terrifying. But we did it. We stood up for ourselves. Patricia Simmons defending us was unexpected. Good people exist everywhere. We just have to give them the chance to show it." Daniel pulled her close, not caring who might still be watching. "You okay?" "I'm exhausted and emotionally drained and probably need a very large glass of wine. But yes, I'm okay." She looked up at him. "We're okay." They drove home separately, but ended up at Daniel's house, where Mrs. Patterson was reading to a sleepy Lily. The older woman took one look at their faces and smiled. "I take it the meeting went well?" "Well enough," Daniel confirmed. "Thank you for watching her." "Anytime. Literally anytime." Mrs. Patterson gathered her things and paused at the door. "You two are good together. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." After she left, Daniel carried a half-asleep Lily to bed, while Clara waited downstairs. When he came back, she was standing in his living room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That this feels like home, your house, I mean. It feels more like home than my place ever has." She turned to him. "Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit." She crossed to him, sliding her arms around his waist. "I'm sorry I almost ran. Sorry I let fear make me think leaving was the answer. You came back. That's what matters. I'll probably get scared again. Probably doubt whether we're doing the right thing. Then I'll remind you, as many times as it takes." Daniel kissed her forehead. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever comes next, we face it together." Clara smiled against his chest. "Together. I like the sound of that." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet house while the night settled around them. There would be more challenges ahead, more judgment, more obstacles, more moments of doubt. But they'd proven something tonight, to themselves and to the town. They weren't going anywhere, not without a fight. And together, they were stronger than anything trying to pull them apart. The victory at the PTA meeting didn't transform their lives overnight, but it shifted something fundamental in how Daniel and Clara moved through the world. They stopped apologizing for existing, stopped shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. When they walked down Main Street holding hands, they did it with their heads up, meeting curious stares with calm confidence rather than defensive anxiety. The gossip continued, of course. Small towns had long memories and even longer grudges. But the gossip lost its teeth. Without the fuel of their uncertainty, it became just noise, background chatter that had no bearing on the actual substance of their lives. What changed most was the quality of their time together. No longer consumed by fear and doubt, they could simply be. Could exist in the ordinary moments that made up a life without constantly questioning whether they deserved them. 2 weeks after the meeting, Clara officially gave up her lease. The decision came gradually, born from the realization that she spent almost every night at Daniel's house anyway. Why maintain 2 residences when one held everything that mattered? "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked as they packed boxes in her living room. "It's a big step." Clara taped up a box of books and marked it with a Sharpie. "I'm sure. This place never felt like home anyway. It was always just a stopping point between my old life and whatever came next. Turns out what came next was you." Lily was ecstatic about the move, treating it like Christmas and her birthday rolled into one. She helped carry small boxes and offered detailed opinions about where Clara's furniture should go, reorganizing the entire house in her imagination. Your couch is prettier than Daddy's couch, so it should go in the living room, she declared with the authority of an interior designer. And your desk should go in the corner by the window because that's where the light is best for working. And your bed, she paused, suddenly uncertain. Where does your bed go? Daniel and Clara exchanged glances. They'd been dancing around this question themselves, trying to figure out the right balance between honesty and age-appropriate boundaries. My bed will probably go in storage for now, Clara said carefully. Your dad's room has enough space for both of us. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a judge deliberating a verdict. So you'll be sleeping in the same room, like married people do? Yes, sweetheart, like that. Okay. Lily shrugged, apparently finding this arrangement perfectly reasonable. Can I help arrange your books? I want to organize them by color. Just like that, the moment passed. Daniel marveled at his daughter's easy acceptance, the way she absorbed this major life change without the drama adults would have brought to it. To Lily, it was simple. People who loved each other lived together. The logistics were just details. The actual moving process took 3 days and involved more trips back and forth than Daniel thought possible for one person's belongings. Clara had accumulated more books than seemed physically reasonable, and her kitchen equipment put his meager collection to shame. By the 3rd day, every muscle in Daniel's body ached, and the house was in complete chaos. I think we own 17 spatulas now, he observed, surveying the kitchen counter covered in duplicate utensils. 18, Clara corrected, pulling another one from a box. And we need all of them. They have different functions. They're spatulas. That one is for fish. That one is for pancakes. That one is for driving me crazy. She threw a dish towel at him, laughing. The sound filled the kitchen, bright and unguarded, and Daniel caught her around the waist and pulled her close. They stood like that in the middle of the cluttered kitchen, swaying slightly, while Lily arranged books in the living room and hummed to herself. This is really happening, Clara murmured against his shoulder. We're really doing this. Having regrets? Not even one. She pulled back to look at him. Are you? I know this is sudden, and your space is now completely invaded by my stuff. Our space. Our stuff. Daniel kissed her softly. And no regrets. This feels right. It did feel right, even when it felt chaotic. Clara's presence transformed the house his parents had left him into something that finally felt like his own. Her books lined the shelves, her coffee mugs hung in the cabinet, her shoes appeared by the front door, and her jacket claimed a hook in the entryway. The house that had been too big for just Daniel and Lily now felt perfectly full. The first real test of their new living arrangement came 3 weeks in, when work stress collided with domestic frustration in ways that felt both mundane and significant. Daniel had a particularly difficult client who kept changing specifications on an electrical job, turning what should have been a 2-day project into a week-long nightmare. He came home exhausted and irritable, only to find that Clara had rearranged the garage to make room for her storage boxes, which meant he couldn't find any of his tools. "Where's my drill?" he asked, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. Clara looked up from her laptop, where she was editing a manuscript with increasingly aggressive red marks. In one of the labeled boxes, I organized everything. I had everything organized, now I can't find anything. Your organization system was pile things wherever there's space. That's not organization, that's controlled chaos. It worked for me. Well, now there are 2 of us living here, so we need a system that works for both of us. Clara's tone had gone sharp, her own stress about a difficult manuscript bleeding into the conversation. Lily appeared in the doorway, her face worried. Are you guys fighting? The question stopped them both cold. Daniel took a breath, forcing himself to step back from the edge of an argument that wasn't really about tools or organization. We're having a disagreement, he said carefully, but we're not fighting. Sometimes people who live together have different ideas about how things should work. Your dad's right, Clara added, visibly softening. I'm sorry for snapping. I should have asked before rearranging the garage. And I'm sorry for being grumpy about it. Your system probably is better than my system. Daniel managed a smile. Want to help me find that drill? They spent the next hour reorganizing the garage together, finding compromises between Daniel's need for quick access and Clara's desire for order. Lily supervised, offering suggestions that were surprisingly practical for a 7-year-old. Later that night, After Lily was asleep, Clara found Daniel on the back porch nursing a beer. "I was scared earlier," she admitted, sitting beside him. "When we started arguing, I thought, this is it. This is where he realizes living together was a mistake. I thought the same thing, that you'd decide I'm too set in my ways, too resistant to change. We're both idiots." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "Normal couples have disagreements about garage organization. It doesn't mean anything except that we're learning to share space. First fight as live-in partners. We survived. Barely. Next time, I'll try not to passive-aggressively reorganize your entire life. And I'll try not to be a grumpy ass about needed changes." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "We're going to screw up sometimes, both of us. The important thing is that we talk about it instead of letting it fester." "When did you get so wise about relationships?" "Right around the time I started having one worth getting wise about." The autumn deepened into early winter, and their unconventional family found its rhythm. Morning routines became synchronized dances, Daniel making coffee while Clara packed Lily's lunch, all three of them navigating the single bathroom with practiced efficiency. Evenings meant homework at the kitchen table, dinner that Clara and Lily often cooked together while Daniel cleaned up from breakfast, and quiet hours where they existed in parallel contentment. The neighborhood's reaction continued to evolve. Some people remained coldly disapproving, crossing the street to avoid conversation or pointedly ignoring them at the grocery store. But others warmed, especially after seeing how naturally Clara fit into Daniel and Lily's life. Mrs. Patterson became Clara's fiercest defender, shutting down gossip with the authority of someone who'd earned the right to speak plainly. Tom at the hardware store started asking Clara's opinion on organizational systems, which led to him implementing some of her suggestions in the store itself. The real surprise came from Patricia Simmons, Jennifer Walsh's mother. She started appearing at the library when Clara was there, striking up conversations about books and editing. The friendship that developed was unexpected but genuine, and it created a buffer against Jennifer's continued hostility. It was hard to maintain a campaign against someone when your own mother publicly declared them a delight. In December, Lily's school held its winter concert. Daniel had been dreading it, anticipating another round of judgment and whispered comments. But when they arrived, Daniel, Clara, and Mrs. Patterson, who'd claimed honorary grandmother rights, the reception was decidedly mixed rather than uniformly hostile. Some parents smiled and waved, others ignored them. A few shot disapproving looks. But the sky didn't fall, the earth didn't open up. They simply existed as a family unit among other family units, and the world kept turning. Lily performed beautifully in the concert, singing with the unself-conscious joy of a child who felt loved and supported. Afterward, she ran to all three of them for hugs, not distinguishing between father, girlfriend, and honorary grandmother. Just her people, the ones who mattered. Emma Walsh was there with her parents and grandmother. Patricia intercepted them before Jennifer could create a scene, steering her daughter away with a firm hand and an apologetic smile toward Clara. Emma waved at Lily, who waved back, and Daniel saw the beginning of a possible thaw in that simple gesture. "That went better than expected," Clara observed on the drive home. "Because we stopped expecting the worst," Daniel replied. "We just showed up and existed, and it turned out that was enough." The holidays brought their own challenges and joys. Clara had always spent Christmas alone since her divorce, and the prospect of a real family celebration left her emotional and slightly overwhelmed. They got a tree together, all three of them arguing good-naturedly about the perfect height and fullness. Lily insisted on decorating every inch of it, resulting in a slightly chaotic but beloved centerpiece. On Christmas morning, Lily woke them at an ungodly hour, bouncing on the bed with the excitement of a child who'd been promised magic. "It's Christmas! Santa came! Can we open presents now?" Clara looked at Daniel with sleepy confusion. "What time is it?" "Too early, but we're up now." He scooped Lily into his arms. "Give us 5 minutes to put on coffee, and then we'll do presents." They stumbled downstairs in pajamas and rumpled hair, the house still dark except for the tree lights. Daniel started coffee while Clara and Lily arranged themselves on the floor by the presents. The scene was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that Daniel had to pause and just take it in. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but Christmas morning in pajamas with the people who mattered most. Simple and extraordinary all at once. Lily opened her presents with enthusiastic chaos, tearing through wrapping paper and exclaiming over every gift. Clara had gotten her an art set with professional quality supplies, and the look on Lily's face was pure wonder. "This is for real artists," she breathed, touching the paints reverently. "You are a real artist," Clara said firmly. "I've seen your drawings. You have talent, and talent deserves good tools." Daniel's gift to Clara was simpler, a first edition of her favorite book, something she'd mentioned loving in college. She held it carefully, eyes filling with tears. "How did you even find this?" "Internet and determination. You like it?" "I love it. I love—" She stopped, looking at him with such open emotion that Daniel's breath caught. "Thank you. For this and for everything." Clara's gift to Daniel was a leather tool belt with his initials embossed on it, beautiful and practical in equal measure. "So you can stop using that ratty thing from hardware stores," she said. "You deserve something that will last." It's perfect. And it was. Not just the gift itself, but the thoughtfulness behind it. The recognition of who he was and what he did. After presents, they made breakfast together, pancakes and bacon and too much coffee. Lily wore her new art smock and got flour everywhere. Clara laughed more freely than Daniel had ever heard. The kitchen was a disaster and the morning was perfect, and Daniel felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. Later, while Lily was absorbed in her new art supplies, Clara pulled Daniel aside. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious enough to spike his anxiety. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I got a job offer, a big one. Publishing house in New York wants me to come on as a senior editor. Salary, benefits, the works. Everything I thought I wanted before I moved here." Daniel's heart sank. "When did this happen?" "The offer came through last week. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." Clara took his hands. "I already turned it down." "What? Why?" "Because everything I actually want is here. You, Lily, this weird little life we've built. I don't want to go back to corporate publishing and city living. I want this. I want us." Relief flooded through him. "You're sure? That's a huge opportunity to walk away from." "I'm sure. I've spent too much of my life chasing opportunities that looked good on paper but made me miserable in practice. This," she gestured around the cluttered kitchen, at Lily humming in the living room, at the life they'd created. "This makes me happy. Real, actual, wake-up, grateful, happy. Why would I leave that?" Daniel pulled her into a kiss that said everything he couldn't quite articulate. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "Besides," she added, "I've been thinking about starting a freelance editing collective, working with other freelancers, building something of our own. I can do that from anywhere, and I want to do it from here." "That sounds amazing. Terrifying and amazing in equal measure, but I think I'm done playing it safe. You taught me that. Taking risks for the right reasons is worth it." The new year brought unexpected news from an unlikely source. Jennifer Walsh appeared at Daniel's door on a cold January evening, alone and looking profoundly uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" she asked without preamble. Daniel considered closing the door in her face, but his mother had raised him better. "Clara's here too. Whatever you need to say, she should hear it." Jennifer nodded, accepting this condition. They settled in the living room, tension thick enough to cut. Lily was upstairs doing homework, giving them privacy. "I came to apologize," Jennifer said, the words clearly difficult. "For the PTA thing, for the gossip, for making your life harder than it needed to be." Daniel and Clara exchanged surprised glances. This was not what either had expected. "My mother sat me down after Christmas and read me the Riot Act," Jennifer continued. "She told me I was being cruel and small-minded, and she was right. I've been taking my own issues out on you both, and that was wrong." "What issues?" Clara asked, her tone careful. Jennifer laughed bitterly. "I'm 33 and getting divorced. My husband left me for his 25-year-old assistant. I've been bitter and angry, and when I saw you two, Daniel so young and Clara older, some ugly part of me decided you were doing something wrong. Like age gaps only counted as problematic when they fit my narrative." "I'm sorry about your marriage," Daniel said, and meant it. "I'm not. It was dying for years. But I am sorry for how I treated you both. My mother pointed out that I was being exactly the kind of judgmental that I'd hate if positions were reversed." Jennifer looked at Clara directly. You're good with Lily. Emma talks about her all the time, and she mentions you too. Says you helped Lily with a school project and were really nice. I should have paid attention to that instead of my own bitterness. Clara's expression softened. We all do things we're not proud of when we're hurting. Thank you for apologizing. That takes courage. Does this mean Emma and Lily can be friends again? Jennifer asked. Emma misses her. I think they'd both like that, Daniel said. After Jennifer left, Clara sat quietly for a long moment. That was unexpected. People can surprise you, for better and worse. She's right, though. I am good with Lily. Clara smiled. I never thought I'd be any kind of mother figure. Thought that ship had sailed. But with Lily, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to be something I'm not. It just feels natural. She loves you. We both do. I love you both, too. So much it scares me sometimes. Spring arrived with the sudden intensity that always surprised Daniel, no matter how many Midwestern seasons he'd lived through. One day the world was gray and frozen. The next, everything was blooming. The house on Maple Street came alive with it. Clara planted flowers in the front beds, Lily started a vegetable garden in the back, and Daniel repaired the porch swing his parents had loved. One warm April evening, they were all on the back porch watching the sunset when Lily looked up from the picture she was drawing. I made something for us, she announced, holding up her sketch pad. The drawing showed 3 figures, a man, a woman, and a small girl, standing in front of a house surrounded by flowers. They were holding hands and smiling, and above them Lily had written in careful letters, Our family. Clara's breath caught. Daniel felt his throat tighten with emotion. It's beautiful, sweetheart, he managed. I wanted to draw our family, Lily explained, because that's what we are, right? Right, Clara said softly, tears visible on her cheeks. That's exactly what we are. Lily beamed and went back to adding details to her drawing. Daniel and Clara looked at each other over her head, communicating everything without words. They'd started as neighbors, became friends, fell in love despite the odds and the opposition. And somewhere along the way, without formal declarations or legal documents, they'd become a family. Not the family any of them had expected or planned, but theirs. Real and messy and beautiful. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found Clara on the back porch with a glass of wine, staring at the stars. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, settling beside her. Just thinking about how different my life is from where I thought it would be. A year ago, I was alone in a house I didn't love, editing other people's love stories and thinking mine was over. And now, she gestured around them. Now I have this. You, Lily. A family I never thought I'd have. It's more than I ever dreamed of. You know what I think about? Daniel took her hand. I think about that first day you knocked on my door about your garbage disposal. How I almost didn't answer because I was tired and wanted to be left alone. How close I came to missing all of this because I was too wrapped up in just surviving to see the possibility of actually living. Thank every broken appliance that brought us together. I'm being serious. You changed my life, Clara. You showed me that it was okay to move forward, to be happy again, to let someone in. You gave Lily someone else to love who loves her back unconditionally. You gave me hope when I'd forgotten what that felt like. Clara wiped at her eyes. Stop making me cry on such a beautiful night. Can't help it. I'm feeling sentimental. Daniel pulled her closer and she rested her head on his shoulder. I want to ask you something. Okay? Move in with me. He felt her confusion and laughed. I know you already live here, but I mean officially. I want to put your name on the deed. Make this house legally ours, not just mine. Make it official that this is where you belong. Clara pulled back to look at him. Daniel, that's a huge gesture. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. This house was my parents', then it was mine, and now it should be ours. All 3 of us. A real home for our real family. What about Lily? Shouldn't we ask her? I already did. She said, and I quote, obviously Miss Clara should be on the house papers because she lives here and she's family. 7-year-old logic at its finest. Clara laughed through her tears. Then yes. I want my name on the deed. I want this to be our home officially. They kissed under the stars, and Daniel felt something click into place. This was it. This was the life he was supposed to have. Not the one he'd planned with Sarah, not the one he'd been barely surviving in before Clara. This one, with this woman and this daughter and this house that finally felt complete. The paperwork took a few weeks to process, but on a sunny day in May, they went to the county office and made it official. Clara's name joined Daniel's on the deed, a legal recognition of what had been emotionally true for months. When the clerk handed them the updated documents, Clara stared at them like they were treasure. "I own a house," she said wonderingly. "I've never owned a house. I always rented, even during my marriage." "You own half a house," Daniel corrected. "We own it together." That evening, they had a small celebration. Mrs. Patterson brought over a cake she'd baked specially for the occasion. Tom from the hardware store stopped by with a bottle of champagne. Pastor Michael sent a card with a handwritten note about the importance of building homes with love rather than just walls. Even Patricia Simmons appeared with a housewarming gift, a beautiful wooden sign that read "The Carter Bennett Home." "I took the liberty of combining your names," Patricia said with a smile. "Seemed appropriate." Lily insisted they hang it by the front door immediately, and so they did. The Carter Bennett Home. A declaration and a truth. This was their place, their family, their life. As summer approached, Daniel and Clara fell into the comfortable rhythm of people who'd learned to navigate life as a team. They worked together on house projects, painting the kitchen a warm yellow that Clara insisted would make mornings better. They hosted small gatherings, no longer hiding their relationship but celebrating it. They supported Lily through the end of the school year and helped her plan for second grade. The gossip never entirely stopped, but it faded into background noise. Some people would always disapprove. Some would always find their relationship confusing or inappropriate or just plain wrong. But increasingly, those voices were drowned out by the people who saw them for what they were. A family doing their best, loving each other honestly, and refusing to let judgment define their happiness. On a warm evening in late June, they were in the backyard watching Lily chase fireflies when Clara turned to Daniel with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I have something to tell you," she said, "and I don't know how you're going to react." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think it is. She took a breath. "I've been thinking about adoption, about legally adopting Lily. If you and she would want that. I know I'm not her biological mother and I would never try to replace Sarah, but I love her like she's mine and I want to make that official. I want to be her mother in every way possible." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. "You want to adopt Lily?" "I want to be her mother, really, truly her mother, with all the legal rights and responsibilities that entails. I want to be listed as her parent on school forms. I want to make medical decisions if needed. I want her to know that I'm not just Dad's girlfriend who lives with you. I'm hers. Permanently." Clara's voice cracked. "Is that crazy?" "It's not crazy." Daniel pulled her into his arms. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever offered, but we need to ask Lily. This affects her most of all." They called Lily over from her firefly hunting. She came running, jar of captured lightning bugs in hand, face flushed and happy. "What's up?" Daniel and Clara knelt down to her level. "Miss Clara wants to ask you something important," Daniel said. Clara took Lily's free hand. "Sweetheart, you know how much I love you, right?" "Right." Lily's expression grew serious, sensing the weight of the moment. "And you know that even though I'm not your biological mother, I think of you as my daughter?" "I think of you as my mom too, kind of. Is that okay?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "It's more than okay. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. How would you feel if I officially became your mom? Through adoption, so that legally, on paper, I'm your mother, just like your dad is your father." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? You could do that?" "If you want me to. If your dad agrees, it would mean some paperwork and probably talking to some official people, but yes, I could officially be your mom. Would I call you Mom instead of Miss Clara? You could call me whatever feels right to you. Mom, Clara, Miss Clara, any of it is fine. What matters is that we'd be a real family in every way possible." Lily looked between them, processing. "Would we have the same last name?" Daniel and Clara exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed that part yet. "We could," Clara said carefully. "If that's what you want. We'd all have to talk about what that would look like." Lily was quiet for a moment, then set down her jar of fireflies and threw her arms around Clara. I want you to be my mom. For real. Forever. Clara held her tight, tears streaming freely now. I want that too, baby. So much. Daniel wrapped his arms around both of them, his own vision blurring with emotion. His family. Complete and real and his. The journey from that first broken garbage disposal to this moment felt both impossibly long and surprisingly brief. All the fear and doubt and judgment had led them here, to this backyard moment with fireflies drifting overhead and love so tangible it felt like a fourth presence. The adoption process took months. There were background checks and home visits and interviews with social workers. Lily had to speak with a child advocate to ensure she understood what adoption meant and genuinely wanted it. Every step was scrutinized, and there were moments when Daniel worried that Clara's age or their unconventional relationship might cause problems. But in the end, love proved more important than demographics. The social workers saw a stable home with a child who was thriving. They saw a woman who had stepped into a maternal role with grace and dedication. They saw a family that worked regardless of how it looked on paper. On a crisp October morning, almost exactly a year after Clara had first knocked on Daniel's door with a broken disposal, they stood in a courthouse with Mrs. Patterson, Tom, Patricia Simmons, and a handful of other supporters. The judge, a kind woman in her 60s, smiled at them warmly. Adoption is about creating legal ties that mirror emotional ones, she said. It's clear to this court that those emotional ties exist strongly in this family. Therefore, it is my pleasure to grant this adoption. Clara Bennett, you are now legally recognized as Lily Carter's mother, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. The gavel came down, and suddenly it was real. Clara was Lily's mother, not just in their hearts, but in the eyes of the law. Lily launched herself at Clara, who caught her with a laugh that was half sob. Daniel joined them, and they stood in the courthouse holding each other while their supporters applauded. We did it, Clara whispered. We're really a family. We always were, Daniel replied. Now the paperwork just matches the truth. That evening, they had a celebration at the house. Not a huge party, just the people who'd supported them through everything. Mrs. Patterson made too much food. Tom brought sparkling cider for Lily and champagne for the adults. Patricia gave a toast about family being defined by love rather than biology. Pastor Michael said something about the courage it takes to build something new from broken pieces. Late in the evening, after everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep upstairs, Daniel and Clara sat on the back porch in the cool autumn air. Clara had changed into comfortable clothes, but still wore the simple necklace Daniel had given her earlier, a pendant with 3 intertwined circles representing the 3 of them. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked, noting her contemplative expression. About how a year ago I was convinced my life was over, that I'd had my chance at happiness and failed, and the best I could hope for was comfortable solitude. And now, she gestured around them. Now I have a daughter, a partner, a home, a family. It feels like a dream. If it's a dream, I don't want to wake up. Clara turned to him, taking his hands in hers. Thank you. For taking a chance on the weird divorced lady who moved in next door, for not giving up when things got hard, for showing me that it's never too late to start over. Thank you for fixing my broken disposal and staying for coffee, for being brave enough to stay when it would have been easier to leave, for loving my daughter like she's yours, because now she is. Ours, Clara corrected softly. She's ours. The words settled over them like a benediction. Ours. Not his, not hers, but theirs. A family built from choice and commitment rather than just biology. A family that had weathered judgment and doubt and came out stronger on the other side. Upstairs, a light came on in Lily's room. They could hear her moving around, probably getting water or rearranging her stuffed animals for the 100th time. Their daughter, who'd been the catalyst for so much of this, who'd asked the hard questions and loved without reservation. Think she's okay? Clara asked. I think she's more than okay. I think she's exactly where she's supposed to be. We all are. The light in Lily's room went off again. The house settled into nighttime quiet. Daniel and Clara sat on the porch, holding hands and watching the stars, feeling the weight of everything they'd built together. It wasn't the life any of them had planned, but it was the life they'd chosen. And in choosing it, choosing each other, They'd found something none of them had even known to hope for. Not just survival, but joy. Not just contentment, but belonging. Not just a house, but a home. Not just people living together, but a family, messy and unconventional and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. As the night deepened and the air grew colder, they finally went inside, locking the door behind them on a world that no longer had the power to diminish what they'd created. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. There would always be people who didn't understand, situations that tested them, moments when the age difference or their unconventional beginning might cause friction. But they'd face it together. Daniel and Clara and Lily, a family built on second chances and stubborn love, and the simple truth that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes all it takes is a broken garbage disposal and the courage to open the door when opportunity knocks. Sometimes the person you least expect turns out to be exactly who you need. Sometimes love doesn't follow the script, and that's when the real story begins. Their story, the Carter Bennett family. Built from broken pieces and made whole through choice and commitment and unwavering faith in each other. And as Daniel climbed into bed beside Clara that night, with his daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall in a house that finally felt complete, he understood something his father had once told him. Home isn't a place. It's the people who make you feel like you belong. He'd found his people. Against all odds and expectations, he'd found where he belonged. And every morning when he woke up next to Clara and heard Lily singing in her room and smelled coffee brewing in their kitchen, he was grateful for every moment that had led him here. Every hardship, every doubt, every judgment, because it all led to this, to love that was worth fighting for, to family that was worth defending, to a life that was worth living, their second chance, their new beginning, their forever.